And looks like we're live, I guess. There we go. Now it says live. I didn't get the nice little thing that says live, so feels like every video when I rewatch, it's me just zoned out for the first few seconds looking at my stream thing, seeing if I'm going. So, hey everybody. Thanks for tuning in to 26th week, episode 26. I've been doing these every week since January 2nd, and it looks like this is the 26th one, so that's half a year. So, been doing this pretty much almost every day in the evenings and doing these streams on Saturdays every day for like 6 months almost. Just kind of in my evenings, pretty much. Yeah, just in my evenings. The only time I have time for it. So I guess that's like not every day, I suppose. So it's a lot of hours though, anyways. Spent a lot of time on it. This project, by the way, is like what did I put my title as today? Live coding Windows 10 OS clone. I've decided to call it today, just to see how YouTube likes that for the title. Is it an OS clone? I don't know. I don't like the word clone necessarily. It's an attempt to make my own OS, to turn my personal website into an operating system, basically. Also, by the way, I'll say early on, I don't know where you are in the world, but in a lot of places it's really hot tonight. It's quite hot where I'm in the world right now in Canada. Up here in BC, it's like 30 Celsius at 9 p.m. So it's warm. Could be worse though. Used to have it worse up in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, where I'm from originally. If you like these streams, you like the idea, you like the video, you like for whatever reason you want to press like, please do it if you want to. Throw me a like. It's easy as pressing the little thumb up button. Or if you really want to support me, if you're interested in the project more so and you want to keep me motivated, then subscribe. That's the best method. As far as last stream, things kind of went off the rails about halfway through because I gotten a bit backlogged on changes that I'd been doing throughout the week. And when I looked at my changes to try to show it to you guys, it was just too much. It was like so confusing what I changed. So this week, what I've done is I've cleaned all that up and I've turned it into much more clear commits that I'm working off of. So I have my branch of work that I've been working on that we're going to do today. We're going to apply to the main branch. And I'm going to go on a per commit basis instead of just jumping into a bunch of changes and figuring it out like I did last time, which turned out to be a mess. Sponsored by Red Bull again today. I don't know why I bought the diet one. I'm not a fan of it actually. I think I was at one time, but not anymore. So yeah, and also I'm thinking, I'm not sure on this, but maybe I might start doing like in the week, not on Saturdays, let's say a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Thursday, that kind of thing, like a 1 hour episode, a 30-minute thing, and just do like one feature. So there is a chance in the future. I know if you guys have been watching all 26 episodes, there was a time where I said every commit is going to be in this stream. Well, I'm going to change it to say every commit is going to be on YouTube and streamed, but I don't know if they're all going to be on Saturdays because sometimes I'm holding code for so long and then when it comes to Saturday I have so many things to show everybody. And yeah, I think I just like to be able to have little smaller episodes where it's like, here's me doing the peek feature, the little window peek thing that I did last episode. That in itself could have been like a 45-minute episode, let's say, if someone was interested in just that little bit. So I might do something like that. We'll see. I want to keep it flowing anyways. So yeah, other than that, I think we should just jump right into the commits. Let's not waste any time. I got a lot of cool, interesting features to get through. I guess I could quickly show you guys what we have so far. That's probably reasonable. This is what we have on the branch at the moment. We got our start menu. We got our file explorer still. We got our Webamp with a couple features it's still got the milk drop thing. It's got a few focus issues, I think, that we're going to tweak. We're going to do a lot of Webamp tweaks today. So one thing I was thinking of, a way to describe getting these kind of libraries, these apps into my OS, it's almost like installing a program, but a very complicated version. As if there's, how there's like the normal install and the advanced install. This is like the super advanced install where you basically have to write scripts to properly install certain pieces. So now I'm properly trying to install like the Winamp focusing aspect, and I've got some ideas for that I'll show you guys. Also got some stuff around the taskbar. I've done some cool things. So man, I actually have a lot of little things that we'll discuss. There's the little peek feature. There's still some bugs that are known. If you've noticed, see my post-its there, I got a lot of red post-its at the moment. I've also got a lot that I've solved over there. That post-it, that's the ones I've done. Those are the ones to do, but both of them keep getting bigger. I actually need to buy more red post-its. Those are the bugs. But yeah, let's just get into it. You guys can check out the branch if you guys want to dig into it more. Into where we are with it. Do it after the stream, obviously, because we're going to have all these changes that we did. So here's all the changes we're going to try to get through. And I don't know if I'm going to rush. I might rush through some and then not rush through others. I don't want it to be completely necessarily walking through every little piece. People, oh yeah, feel free to comment, by the way, during the stream or after the fact. Throw some comments in the video. But yeah, I'm playing around with the flow of it, you know. I want to get stuff done sometimes, like as far as I want to go through the code and I want to put stuff in and show you guys cool features that I'm adding. So I don't want to get slowed down sometimes with having to re-explain every little thing. So, but that's another reason why I'm thinking of doing these smaller episodes where it's more isolated and I have time to do a little explanation, you know, in that little version versus if I'm doing a 2 or 3 hour stream here. Going over the same thing every week can be tedious to some people, especially if you're following along. So I think I'm gonna, after doing this for 6 months, I'm starting to think I might treat the viewer a little more like they've been here before, let's say, or let's just dive into the code, you know, that kind of thing. So on that note, let's just dive into the code. So let's open the first commit. What did I label it here? Use focusable for non-window apps, right? So this is a cool one. So the only non-window app I have right now is Webamp. The Winamp one. Every other one is around a window with the close, minimize, maximize. And then I'd kind of done my own version of focus. And if you see here, a lot of red, except for right there. Mostly here. Like it turned out I ended up redoing this on the app. And then I realized, hey, you know, I actually already had this in the use focusable hook that I'm using for the windows. So I was kind of happy that like, oh good, I twice came to the same conclusion that I needed this and I needed that and I needed these two pieces. So but luckily I found a way around it. And the only difference that has happened actually with use focusable is that I've had to extend it to have these focus events so that I can pass a little bit of additional stuff. So use focusable does its normal on blur and on focus stuff, which in this case is like setting the foreground ID to blank. In the case of focus, it's putting it to the top of the stack and setting the foreground ID. But then there's these additional things that are specific to the apps. So in this case, for the Webamp app, it has its own little unfocus that you can do, which will allow me to animate that bar. So this bar right here, where it's like light, and then if I click off, you see how it kind of dims? That's like separate from my thing. Like we take it for granted that, oh, it's just doing that, of course. But it's like you actually literally have to program all that stuff in. So that's what we're doing here for Webamp at least. And this is the use focusable piece where we kind of tweaked it. Like I said, we've added, we've changed. I split the type into two pieces, into an events piece and the focusable piece, so that I could also get these events as the callback events. And then all I did here is like take blur as it was before. And what did I do here? Yeah, I just added to try to call the callback. And I've used this optional chaining, the question mark dot. So if you don't define this, it's not going to cause an error or anything. So I'm just saying run this, passing the event. And I had to do refactor there a little bit to get the event because before I was just destructing it directly. Now I'm doing it here on event, and then I'm also passing event here. Same idea here. Turned it into an event. Interesting. Oh yeah, here I've got a default because you can call move to front without something, such as is done somewhere here. But on blur is always called with an event. So that's the only distinction. Yeah, that's it though. Otherwise, it's the same thing. So you see I just added that. The on blur and focus are those Webamp specific ones. And now I'm using that z-index as well, so I don't need to calculate z-index. I don't need the session. I don't need to know about the minimize, maximize state or any of that stuff. All of that was already part of use focusable. So that's the first big change I'm going to do. And yeah, that's what I've noted here. Let's just dive right into it. So we need to go to the Webamp app, Webamp index. There we go. And why is it complaining about this? Let us close VS Code and reopen it. I think one of the changes that I've done that's at the end of the episode is causing bugs with it. Because at the end of the episode, I'm going to do a bit of a larger change here where we switch the prettier rules for how the formatting is. There we go. So yeah, now it's okay with this for now. But at the end of the episode, I'm going to change a lot. I'm actually going to change a few things this episode to just remove a ton of code. Like there's a few places where I'm doing code, and there's more I might remove in the future. But yeah, I'm just trying to remove a lot of code whenever possible. Things that don't make sense or didn't need to be there. So let's just... I'm thinking for doing the file, I might just literally copy over the file raw, the commit. Is it that easy? Let me just try, because remember I just explained the changes. So yeah, it's the same changes basically that I just said. I started using use focusable. Don't need the session anymore. I don't need the effects or wait, did I? Oh yeah, I actually needed Memo because I'm making these focus events that I said I'm passing to focusable now. I've just explained this. So as you can see, there's more red than green. That's good. You see it's complaining right now because I haven't yet changed use focusable, but we're going to do that too. So this is going to be the format of this episode a little bit, where I'm just going to apply some of these changes after explaining them, because I think it's just the fastest way to get through these. And at the same time, I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence. And if someone has a question or I'm moving too fast, please post a message. But we're pretty much walking through these lines. Like I just explained these ones already too, where I said I split before this was one type like this big type here on the left, and I split it into events and focusable so that I could reuse this events piece as a partial callback. I'm always pretty a stickler for making sure to define every type. It even complains if I just beam like, oh, it's just an any, it's like, no, explain that. I've went partial though. That's a little lazy. It's probably correct though, to be honest. So it's fine. I suppose this could just be like this and this. No, not really. Because in the focusable, they're not optional. So I would rather say that the event ones are required, and then here in the callback, they're optional. That's what I'll do it. Because this could just be nothing, I think. Yeah, because of the way that I'm doing. So I've already said the optional chaining. So there we go. So I've explained that change. And there was actually another piece to this that I missed. So that was the two files that I changed. But I think there was actually one other piece to this commit that I put in the show notes here. If you see in the show notes here, I mentioned for switching to use focusable, I also needed to remove a z-index definition somewhere that I think I forgot to do it first. Here it is, I think, though. So let's just do this commit at the same time. Okay, so this is in the use Webamp hook. I think I missed something. Let's see here, use Webamp. Where is it here? Stack order? What? Oh, because I don't need this z-index, right? So I was setting a z-index here on the initial load. That's actually not necessary. So we don't even need to think about it. It's essentially a piece of this, getting rid of it and using use focusable. So now if we go to the browser and we open it up here, we refresh, it should still properly work as a use focusable. Ta-da! What happened? Something broke. Let's go back. Oh, I know why. Because I closed VS Code, it stopped running my deb instance. There we go. It's back up. Presumably. I haven't pressed refresh yet. There we go. So it is back up. So let's open another window. So now if we open this one, it should come out on top. There we go. So it's on top. It faded, by the way, in. You notice that? That's another thing we're going to fix, by the way. In a second, I'll show you what I mean. But you see, so this one's on top. If I click this, now it's on top, and it did the focusing here. If I click out here, it unfocused there. If I click this one, that one goes on top. I click this, it focuses here and changes the bar. And another cool thing is if I click out here and I click in here, or let's say this is here. Now I click in here, you see this bar lit up because I clicked there and it focused there. But if I unfocus and I click this one and I click here, it focuses on the main one. I've set it to do that. So cool, it's working. And then if I press close, yeah, it worked. But you see how close, it just disappeared. That's another thing we're gonna have to fix. It should fade out, but I forgot, I don't have the transition there set up, whereas I do for the other windows. So there we go, switch to use focusable for non-window apps. So for this case, we just did it for Webamp, but if I had other window apps where I had also kind of rolled my own focus solution, this was the epiphany that, oh, you know what? I could just do the use focusable hook, which is another great thing for hooks, you know? I ended up having a hook and I just realized, oh, I can use it in another context, you know? Had it been a class, I'm not sure I would have been thinking about extending it or that kind of thing. Maybe I would have, but I'm more of a hooks person, so I've been really liking the React hooks anyways. So there we go. Switch to use focusable for non-window apps. Done. That was a nice quick change, and it didn't make much of a difference visually, but it got rid of a lot of code, and now the focus logic is in one place. So if all of a sudden I change focus logic or something else needs to change, I change it, and then it's going to work for Winamp or whatever other app that doesn't have a window, plus apps that have windows. Because there's going to be other apps that won't have windows, I think, in the future. So next thing is what I was just talking about, delay closing Webamp. So let's take a peek at how I solved that one. Here it is here. Open up the commit. Simple enough? Question mark? So I'm going to do the same thing I did last time, where I'm going to just copy the file like so. And that was the use Webamp hook. And then we're going to look at the changes so that we can both understand it together. Come on, changes, appear magically. There we go. Through the power of slow. So I've pulled in the window transition duration in millisecond timeout. This is the same constant that I use in a few other places to handle the delay, which I believe is like 250 milliseconds. Yeah, 250 milliseconds. I'm bringing in stack order. Why do I need stack order? Oh, sneaky, sneaky. This is funny, yeah. Because I actually changed this hook as my second commit. But then remember I said I forgot to do the z-index change and I did it like 4 commits later. So I've snuck back in here. I did not want this. This is something I already just removed. So that's why it's considering adding. There we go. So sneaky, sneaky there. So actually it was just, this is correct. And then, oh yeah, this was like another, oh yeah, this looks much smaller, the change. If you saw the diff here in GitHub looks like I changed a bunch of stuff. But this is where I like VS Code better. It's like VS Code realized, oh, he just put something here and here. So it's like I wrapped several functions in something, basically. And in this case, what I've done is I went to Webamp's site and I realized in their API that on will close and on minimize return subscription functions that you can unsubscribe to. And I thought that was a nice little way to do some cleanup as well. So, and I think it actually made a difference, to be honest. I think I needed to do cleanup properly or else it was causing bugs. So now it actually cleans up after these two listeners, the close listener and the minimize listener. Yeah, that's all. That's the only other piece I changed. So I put these two things, I run the two functions and put them in an array because they both return these unsubscribed functions. And then what I do is that, and I set a timeout here, whereas before I didn't. Yeah, on minimizes here. Right, okay. So all I did is I added this to the end of on will close, and I use the cancel now. So now when on will close runs for Webamp, I take the cancel function and I say cancel right away. Don't close Webamp. I do all the stuff I was doing before, and then I add a timer at the end that says after the window transition, then clean out the subscriptions and then close Winamp. Yeah. So I go through the subscription array and I say for each one, this is going to be an unsubscribe function, take it and then just run it like that. So that's going to run on this one and unsubscribe from that listener, unsubscribe from this one, and then it's going to run close. And the reason it says close doesn't exist is just because I haven't mentioned it yet. Because I don't have the proper Webamp type. Maybe I need to find it. That would be nice if I had it. Because I don't have the proper type definition, so I've actually made my own custom one here. Here it is here. Sorry, I jumped to it. Here's how I got to it. So from here where it's like doesn't exist, I right click on the variable, go definition. I see, oh, it's based on this. I go definition, and I see this is the type I made. And I just add close in here. So close is another function that takes no arguments and just returns a void data. So now when I see the Webamp hook, I see that it's not complaining. So it's a little more simple. So now it's running these two functions basically, get put in the array, and then Now on will close cancels the event at the start and then sets a timer to do the close properly. Right, it unsubscribes from these. Yeah, oh right, yeah, that's so then it doesn't catch this again. So if I were to not do this piece and I were to say close again, it would once again trigger on will close. It would once again cancel and try to do all this stuff. So I basically say stop listening for close events and really close this time. So that's clever. I actually forgot I did it that way a little bit. Good job, Past Dustin. So let's commit that as well. That was a simple one enough. Delay closing Webamp for transition. So before we commit it, hey, here's a crazy idea. Let's test it, right? So we open, we see it faded open, and now when I close it, we should see it fade. There we go, it faded. Whereas before it was just like, disappear. Now we give it that extra 1/4 of a second to fade out properly. We added the close type, and we did those little changes that I just mentioned. Very minor ones. Nice. And moving on. Really hot today. Man, is it hot. So the next one is going to be removing Butterchurn. Butterchurn is basically Webamp's version of Milk Drop. Milk Drop is like a visualization thing. I've decided it just slows things down for now. I could disable it or do some other thing, but it's actually easy enough to remove it. And it's just, I don't know, I added it as a proof of concept. Maybe I'll bring it back one day. One day in the near future. Oh man, so there were a few changes here. Actually, no, they're pretty minor, so let's just go through them. I'll go through them with you guys in the code here as I peek on the side. I'm just going to move my chat window over so I can see if you guys throw me a chat. Not that I've gotten one yet, but feel free. I'm awaiting. So yeah, let's go to the functions here. So the first one is the Webamp function for figuring out the window positions and their height. So I'm going to say it's only 2 windows this time. So double the height, and we no longer have a milk drop window. That's the first key change. Then we have to go into the positions definition and say, hey, there is no more milk drop there. And there's also no more Butterchurn setting. And there's also no more Butterchurn stuff here. That was just unnecessary stuff for now. And we also have to go into this hook and remove it from here just to clean up things more. Nice, it's very clear what needs to be removed there. Oops, I think I removed one too many. Oh no, I didn't. Oh, I guess at this point, if I've removed z-index as well, then I don't really... Options is just empty at the moment. Yeah, I think this is going to transition to something else pretty soon as well, but one step at a time. This is where I got lost last time, because I changed so many things in Webamp that I was like, now this is empty, or now it's something else, and I couldn't figure out the steps that got me to where the code was. So now I've kind of detangled it, and I get to show you guys clearly. Now I'm removing Butterchurn. Now I'm doing this. Now I'm doing that. So it's a little more clear, whereas the other day I was all over the place. So now we have to remove these 2 libraries. So that's a little less libraries, which is nice. And finally, we have to remove the files themselves, which are just these 2 guys here. Delete and delete. There we go. So now we just have that one library file. And we've removed Butterchurn. So now if we, to test that one easily enough, we open up Webamp. There we go. So you see there's only 2 there. And it opened at a weird position, but I think that's because it had it saved from before. If we just clear that. Yeah, there we go. That opened nicely where you'd expect with the right amount of space here and here. And we can measure it with our folder ruler, as I call it. So you can see there's the height there, and the height there is pretty much correct. Nice. Looks... Yeah, I think it's correct. It looks 1 or 2 pixels off, but I think I was 1 or 2 pixels inaccurate. So, okay, moving on to the next little cool thing. We got rid of Butterchurn there. Let's finalize it, make it official. Everything's saved. We copy the little commit here, and we no longer have Butterchurn. And it's almost the same in Winamp. The real Winamp is that you literally have to install Milk Drop, or at one point you had to, I think, or expansions. I mean, I had versions before it was too popular, like Winamp 1, I think I had. So now we're getting into a couple cool ones. Let's look at the next change thing here. So we just did these 4. So the next one here, dynamic MP3 loading with blob and duration. So this one's kind of neat. So the idea behind the dynamic MP3 loading is in another episode. Oh yeah, a lot of changed here, man. You see, this is where it gets crazy. This is why we're just going to copy the changes, some of them. But let's explain it. So the basics of what I did here, let's go to where it's red and see what I removed. I need to remember for myself kind of what I did. I think I just moved things around in like the most minor way. But again, it's the GitHub PR makes it look like I changed way more than I did. I think everything just indented one direction back. I wonder if what's this split view? Does split view look better? Still looks like I changed a bunch of stuff. How about what we'll do is we'll copy that file and we'll see if VS Code looks better. But let me just try to explain it as soon as I can remember. So, right. So with Webamp, before I was returning a URL, where's that code right there? Yeah, this is the type I had before, where I was giving it a URL and I was like reading the file, converting it from a buffer to a blob to a URL, to like a blob URL or whatever they call it, a data URL, and then passing that. But then I figured out Webamp actually can take the blob itself, so I can skip one step. So that was part of the plan, was skipping that. And the next part was that I realized you can pass duration. And the reason I wanted to pass the duration was, why was that? Oh yes, because Webamp tries to read that anyways, and it's just a waste of time because I already know the duration when I get the artist and title from the data that I was already using. Because I'm using this music metadata browser library to parse the buffer data and to get the MP3 data out of the MP3. So I know duration as well. As you can see here, now I'm getting duration, and now I pass duration plus the artist title, and instead of URL, I pass blob, where I go buffer to blob. Whereas before it was like buffer to blob to URL. So that's the basics of the change. That's all I really did, is switch to this blob format and switch and add duration. So that's one part of the change as far as sending more data to Webamp. The next part of the change, I think, was here, in that now I have it when you double click a file and it's got this singleton app concept. Let me just see if I can find that singleton here. Yeah, here, when you try to open a process, if it's considered the singleton process, which Webamp is, then instead of making a new process and making a second version of Webamp, it just updates the URL. So currently Webamp gets a new URL update in its little process, but it's not doing anything with it. So that's where this comes along, is where I'm going to monitor for the URL. And if it changes, then I parse the new track information and I append that track to Webamp. So that's part of the puzzle here. And I've also decided to keep track of the current URL. So like Webamp loads, let's say with no URL, if you just open it directly, or it opens with, if you open via an MP3, it loads with that URL. And then if you open up another MP3, the current URL changes to that one. The reason I did keeping track like that is I don't want duplicates. So I don't want, like, if you click it again and again, it just keeps adding to the playlist. I could have done it that way, but I prefer this way. So you could still have duplicates, I guess, but you'd have to like double click one, then double click the other. Double click one. Is that the only thing? Other than that, was there any point in keeping this? Maybe. I wonder if this could have been some like loop issue. I'm happy for it only to work once anyways. Maybe down the road if I want someone to be able to like double click and just keep adding it, but I don't see the point in that. So that was the main change here, was that I monitor for the URL and try to append a track. I had to add this append track function, I believe. Or no, it's part of Webamp, but I had to add to the type to define that. I also got rid of absolute here. That is actually a totally different unrelated change, but I might just do that first. And z-index here, I forgot about that one. Let's do both of these before we do anything else, because these are just cleanup changes. So we haven't done any changing yet. Yeah, before we do that, let's just quickly clean up this. Where was this? This is in apps, Webamp, types, this one here. Yeah, so I never actually used this absolute. I think I did at one point, but I don't need it. And then the z-index we're no longer setting via Winamp. We're doing that on its container, I believe, with the use focusable hook. So those two we don't need anymore. This we need, and these positions we need. Those are things we're setting in the functions where we do setting of stuff. So I'm just gonna say clean up Webamp type. Webamp options type. Yeah. Yeah. No. Dispatch type. Yeah. There we go. I'll slip that in here. Yeah, I guess here. And I'll remove that from here. I was confused by that. Okay, back to this. So ignore that. We just did that. But yeah, so I've changed the track. I had to move it from here to up here so that I could use it, define it here with append track. Because you can't say track array here if you define it here. I mean, you can, but the way that I've got TypeScript very strict, it complains about that. It's like, hey, just define it before you use it, dude. Let's not have to rely on the compiler to figure this out. Let's just clean it up. So I didn't do a big change here, but I moved this from here to here, and then I did that blob duration versus URL and no duration. That's all of that. Oh man, there was another Z index. Ugh. Clean up more types here. Yeah, these Z indexes I don't need. Again, that was another one. What was that? Clean up Webamp dispatch type. PT2, part 2. There we go. Part 2 of the screw up. Was that it? Was that all I did? Yeah. I wonder if I need music in these. You know, I need more feedback as to what you guys want me to change. If you the people that tune in, anyone seeing this that tunes in and then tunes out, it's like, can you tell me why you tuned out? I mean, fair is fair if you're tired or whatever like that. But if you're like, oh, I don't like the tone of what he's saying or this or that, or if you've got some kind of piece of feedback where I can be like, you know, I could change that, or they got a point there, I'm willing to do it. So feel free to throw me something. Unless it's like, what's the deal with your face or something like that? Because there's probably something I could do about that, but I'm not going to. So what did I do in here? I've switched from using file name to URL because I believe I had to pass the whole URL instead of the file name. But why? This is where the thing is a big change. This one I'm just going to copy and then we're going to explain it. We're going to figure that out in VS Code. But before we copy that one file, I just wanted to mention this piece as well. So this is where I was saying before I was doing like a buffer to a blob to a URL kind of thing. Now I've extracted out this other function that's buffer to blob, which was happening here. And now I've made this buffer to URL function is the object URL where it uses buffer to blob. So now I can use this separately. So that was a nice little extract here. So let's apply those changes and this change and then see where that takes us. So I think I'm just going to do the lazy man's copying again. I wish there was like a better way to do this. I could actually just like apply the whole commit. I don't want to do that though, to be honest, because I've already kind of changed a few things. So we'll just do one piece at a time. That's how Rome was built. Is that what they say? Or Rome wasn't built in a day. Yeah, it wasn't built in a day. Oh, it's so warm. I have an AC unit, but I feel like it's probably going to be a tiny bit loud if I were to use it right now. So let's paste that first change and see where that takes us. Yeah, so we got the buffer to blob function that we haven't made up yet. We imported this parse buffer because we're going to do it in here where we've added this. We've made this parse track function, which is basically what was happening already in Webamp. I've extracted this out so that I can use it at the append tracks level, I think, and possibly somewhere else. Okay, next file. The next file is the Webamp index file. Let's just find that. That's here. Doot. See what's changed. Come on. It's like slow to say what's changed. So we just discussed what I did here. This was monitoring for the URL. We don't have append tracks yet. Otherwise, that one's coolio at the moment. Next one is the types. And for that, I think I'll just manually do that one because that's pretty simple. So I've changed track to be up here. And I have it as export, but I'm not 100% 100% sure that's necessary. Do I need that? Debatable. Let me see here. Track. How many times am I? Yeah, I'm not sure that that needs to be exported. That might have been an oversight on my part, or undersight. Let's get rid of it, that export for now, and keep it not exported because it wasn't originally exported. But we will add append tracks. That's another function that Webamp has here. I would much prefer to just get the type for this stuff. I need to figure out where Webamp has its types. Maybe we'll make that for the next stream in the notes here. Webamp has types lib ? I think it does. I think I could probably import it as a dev dependency just to get its libs. I suppose that's not unreasonable to do that. That's it for this file, I believe. It was just just moving tracks up here so that we could do that, and then switching blob duration. And then now we get the big one here, the hook. The hook's gonna be the big one, and that's where we're gonna figure out what the heck did I do, because I did a bunch of stuff in this one. Here we go. So we added parse track. We got base name here. Why is it there? Question mark. Right. So load Webamp is passing URL now. Is that something I changed here? I believe so. In the index. Yeah. No, this needs to be changed then. This is wrong. Did I not change that in the code up here? Maybe I missed that while I was doing copy pastage. That's weird. Seems like that's missing, but totally would have been necessary. Let me double check if I look here. Where's load Webamp? Here. Yeah, I'm doing base name URL. But then here in the definition for load Webamp, let me go back to the code. Did I not just change it? Yeah, I changed it to URL, but I was still doing base URL. Maybe that's another mistake I made. That's wrong. So let's fix that as well. Feels wrong to me. So if I change load Webamp to expect the URL, then we don't need base name here anymore. And we still need base name, I guess, for parse track. I think the purpose of it is default. Oh, it's the file name. What am I using file name for? I think it's fallback. Yeah, it's fallback for the title. So if it's not able to parse the title, then it'll use the file name, which is what Webamp and Winamp would do anyways. But here for load Webamp, I think I needed it to be a URL, I thought. Let's double check. So I switched it to URL here. And switched it here. Now this run Webamp thing, right, yeah, you see only this part changed here. So I moved this part down, I think. This is where it checks to see, is there a file? And if there is, we're gonna try to set the initial track by doing that parse. This is basically what was happening in parse track. This here, where it's taking the parse buffer, that's the ID3 reader, the MP3 tag reader, and doing the file name piece, right, which is no longer there. And yeah, that's good. Okay. So that should be fine like that. So basically what I did in the change is I moved that down, and I've turned this into a function called run Webamp where I pass in the options. And you see now I have, this is that cleanup function. I don't need to do the cleanup function anymore, now that I'm going to be loading it via a blob instead of that blob URL. Because when it was a blob URL, you have to clean up the buffer URL. Buffer URL it's called, that's what it was. But when it's a buffer URL, you have to clean that up. And then now I move that if file function that was up here, I moved it down here and say if there's a file, do the parse track, which has been that extracted function. Yeah, where I pass in the base name here, right, of the URL, which is now properly the URL, not like last time. And then run Webamp where I got the track, and I just dump it into initial tracks, which is basically what was going on here, where initial track was getting it. And if there is no file, then just run Webamp straight, like if you're clicking the icon without an MP3. Okay, so this looks a lot more simple. You see how much nicer this diff is versus like, what the heck did I do here? This is the problem with GitHub in their PRs, is like, this is just bad. I mean, because if I do side by side, it still wasn't correct. Remember, we just did side by side, and it was not like how VS Code looks, unfortunately. And we just need to do this piece here, and we'll just do that manually just for fun. Where is it here? Utils, functions. So yeah, we got this buffer to URL function, and I'm just going to create the buffer to blob function here, paste it in. So that's basically what was happening right here. And we're just going to say buffer to blob, and that'll replace that. There we go. And now we have two functions. And yeah, I don't think we needed that track to be exported. As a test, what we could do is a build. Build does a nice type check. You could do type check manually too, I guess. I should probably make a type check function because it's a little bit faster than a build. But if, oh, okay, there was a problem. Okay. So I did need track at some point. Where am I using track here? Okay, right. I return a track is a promise. Right, okay. So I actually do need to export it now. Okay, so I should have trusted my past self in that case. Otherwise, though, I think we're done this change. I can close these things here. What was that change? That was dynamic MP3 loading with blobs / duration. And extract buffer to blob function, which I did. That was actually part of the original commit, so it was no big deal there. And I'm going to see if this build finishes here, which it looks like it's going to, yeah. I'm going to undo these two changes here because these are just part of the build that I actually don't care about right now. Okay, one at a time, fine. There we go. So yeah, now we have the function there to parse tracks. We got the loading of the URLs. We've updated the types. We've turned the Webamp function into a run Webamp function based on certain conditions, whether it loads. And we've extracted out that function. That is the end of this little piece here of the dynamic MP3 loading with blobs and durations. And now we test it. Now we need an MP3. Whoa, what happened? I think sometimes when you do a build, it like breaks the dev part. Oh yeah, it broke something here. Let's just kill that and start it again. In the meantime, I'll find an MP3. Any requests for music? How about some Beck? Okay, it's about to load here. Let's go back to the browser and see if it kicks in. 3, 2, 1, not working. Refresh. There we go. Okay, I'm going to drag a music in. So there's some music I just dragged in from my Windows folder. And if I double click, there we go. We got Beck Loser, so that worked. And if we close this and we just double click here, opens fine without an MP3. And now that it's open, if we double click back, there we go. It loaded in here. And now if you double click it, you can just play it just like that. Cool, so that worked. Delete that. Okay. So there we go. We have that little piece of the Webamp story. And we can just double check here and make sure there wasn't any other pieces to that commit. I don't think there was. Next one up is the skin one. So without any further breaks, I think we should get right to that one. Let's commit this like so. And we go on to the skin support, which is a cool one. It's pretty cool. I don't know if you guys remember Webamp skins back in the day, but they were pretty cool. And we're going to finally add them here. So I think that's this one here. It's a little hard to line this up. There we go. Yeah, this is added skin support, and it's another big one. Why is it so big? I think because it was a complicated change. This change keeps slipping in now. This is some Next.js garbage. That's annoying, but we'll fix that in a second. This is correct. We need to update that now. We actually probably should have updated this when we deleted Butterchurn to properly reflect that the file system had changed, but whatever. We'll do it here. So I've added 3 skins, one called Aqua X, one called Nucleo, and one called my favorite SpyAmp Pro. We're going to download those now. I'll just get those downloaded so that we have them ready to copy to the right place. And I got these out of some free place. That Webamp skins are free, so nothing there to worry about. So the Webamp skin format is this WSZ format. So that's the format we're going to use. So I'm just going to search for MP3 and find that. There we go. So this is actually going to change in the near future when we do the open with logic. But until we're there, we're just going to switch to we're just going to get this part done. So we'll add WSZ files to the check, or to be looked for in both cases. So we're saying WSZ files should be open with Webamp, and they should have the same icon for now. Maybe in the future I'll use a different icon, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. This one here, what did I change? Let's go to the top and see if that makes more sense. So I've added a constant here of the new base options for Webamp, where it just is based on the available skins. So we're going to add that to the constants for Webamp, which I don't have any darn clue where they are. That's in functions. That's a not correct place for it, but whatever. So we'll just put it right here. So I've made it a constant that we're exporting called, what's it called here? Base Webamp options. And it looks like I've also added a little, so I'm also importing cleanup buffer URL because unlike for the MP3s where you can pass them as blobs, for the skin files, you have to load them still via my old method. So I've created a new function here to clean up the skin. So clean buffer on skin load, because Webamp has its own little internal event listener called skin is loaded that you can, I wonder if this event listener has to be cleaned up too with an unsubscribe. That's a good question. It could just clean up itself. Let's double check this, because if that's the case, I can have like a little snake's tail thing and just have it clean up itself. So if we see here, no, it just returns a void promise. Okay, that's fine. But if you look at some of the other ones here, yeah, you see this one returned a function. Yeah, as well did the on will close returns a function as well. So those were those unsubscribed functions. You see here, unsubscribe, unsubscribe. But yeah, in the case of skin is loaded, perhaps that's just a one-time thing. So no big deal there. So we're gonna have to add this to the type, but it's another thing. So yeah, once the skin's loaded, if there was a URL, clean it up. And there should be a URL. Wouldn't make much sense if there wasn't, but I've added that little check there. I'm actually not a fan of adding so many little checks. I want to have better code that doesn't need those checks, but I haven't quite solved that yet, it seems. So this index file, was this the only other? Oh no, there was a couple of files that changed. So what changed in the index file? Here's where I'm doing the cleanup buffer on skin load. This is where I've added to that thing we added last time where we monitor the URL for when an MP3 is loaded. Now we've added a little bit of logic to say, to check, you know, oh, does the URL end with MP3? Actually, I don't like that, what I just did there. This is not how I should have done that. So let's change that. Because, yeah, I don't like doing the ends with thing when there's a function to very explicitly say what you're looking for. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's get some of this junk out of the way. And, okay, so yeah, first I'm going to import clean buffer on skin. Clean buffer on skin load, sorry. I'm also going to import the buffer to URL. Typically those two go together. Typically there's like buffer to URL and then there's cleanup, but I'm doing the skin version here because Webamp has that special feature where it'll tell me when it's ready. So here's that hook I added to monitor URLs. And I'm going to wrap it right here in that condition. But instead what I'm going to do is extension name. That's what I should be using. Extension name of the URL equals .mp3. There we go. Yeah, I much prefer this than the ends with. I think it actually makes pretty much no difference at all, to be honest, but I care about the extension, so I should just say that. I don't care how it ends, I care what the file extension is, even though they're basically the same thing. So this imported incorrectly. Let's just fix that. I actually wanted that off path. There we go. And then I'll just put this in here. That was all that was doing. Nothing needs to change there. But then in the else case, so there's only two files that I allow to run. If it's not an MP3, then it must have been a WSZ file, is basically the conclusion there. And in that case, what I'm doing here is I'm saying we do buffer URL of the content that we got from the file, because it's a skin file this time. And then we run these two commands. We say cleanup buffer on skin load. So clean up this URL when Webamp says the skin has loaded. And now Webamp, go load the skin, which is another function it has called set skin from URL. And we pass in the buffer URL. So that's simple enough there. Now we're going to go to the types and quickly add these two functions that exist. QRS, so yeah, set skin from URL and skin is loaded. These are the two functions. One takes a URL, the other returns the void promise. Is that what it returns? Yeah, it returns a promise, because then you say skin is loaded, then da-da-da-da-da. So it's a promise, yeah, but it doesn't, the promise doesn't, yeah, there's no unsubscribe anyways. And then last but not least, I suppose, is the use Webamp hook. And I'm just going to manually copy those changes as well, I guess, because they're actually pretty small. So from the functions, we need that base Webamp thing, and we need the cleanup buffer on skin load here as well. And same thing, we also need the ability to import the skin as a buffer URL. We now need that feature again. Where's the options here? That's line 53. Yeah, here. So now we're going to change it to be like that, basically. So now instead of just taking options, it's going to make a new object that's the base settings plus the options that have been passed in, like that. And if we do, where's the render when ready? So these are the subscriptions here. I'm just going to make this small. Where's the place to make this small? Here. Yeah, okay, I've made everything small now. It's a little easier. So it defines these three functions, and then here's where Webamp loads. But before it loads, I'm going to do this, where I'm going to say if the option you passed in was an initial skin and it has a URL, then also set up that listener that when the skin loads, do the cleanup. And then there's some code that's very similar to the other code I just did, where same thing, where I do extension name off of the path. Where is it here? There. Extension name of the URL equals mp3. Then we do the parse track, just as you'd expect. Otherwise, we are going to do a run Webamp with this function that says the initial skin is the URL of that buffer URL. There we go. Save all of these things. And I think that, for the most part, was the complete change, was it? What other changes were there? Oh, I have to add the skins. Right. Yeah, I've mentioned them here. I've listed them and called them by, I've made names for them and put them to paths in the skins folder. So that's what we'll make, is we'll make in the public, we're going to make a new folder called skins. And I'm just going to drag those three into it. There we go. There they are right there. And now we're going to do the build fs command. Yarn build fs. That's just going to remake the JSON file with these new files so that we can see them in our file explorer. And now I think, so we've done we just did the file systems. Oh, what happened? I've lost my connection to it there. Sorry, guys. Looks like you guys are still here. But the browser just disappeared on us. That's weird, hey? Let's try to bring it back. Oh, there it is. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see it okay still. My OBS is acting a little weird. So we copied the stuff. I think we've done pretty much every little piece of this here. I don't see anything we haven't done. So let's see if we have Webamp skin support now. Oops, I was already in the right place. So if we go to our folders here, we can see now that there is a skins folder. No. Let's do a refresh here of the app. Open this again. There's the skins folder. So here's the three skins here. So if we click one, there we go. Cool. So now it loads with the other skin style. And if I double click this one, it changes to that skin. And if I double click this one, it changes to the Spyamp skin. And I can also right click and go into skins and pick from the available options. So I can say aqua, and I can say skins, Nucleo there, and I can say skins here. And I can also close Webamp and then open it back up, and then it's normal. And I can go into music and I can open up the demo song and it passes here, and I can change the skin at the same time, and then I can play the thing. Cool, all that stuff worked. And I can minimize it, I can maximize it. There's a little issue there, but I've logged it on the board. It doesn't quite maximize correctly for Webamp to the right spot sometimes, but I haven't figured out why. Anyways, I think that was it. That was a cool one. So let's log that as the added skin support to Webamp. And added some skins that I think are reasonably okay to add. There we go. So we just did all the Webamp stuff. Man, is it hot in here. So hot. Oh. I'd turn the AC on a bit, but I think it would be too much, but I'm just pouring sweat, guys. What are we at? We're at 55 minutes in. Well, this format's going quick of having the commits, so I'm happy about that. Oh, but it's just darn hot. So let's move on to the next commit. Sorry for my profuse sweating. I can't help it. I could turn the AC on, but yeah, I just feel like it's going to be noisy. I don't have anyone here to tell me how noisy it is, so I don't want to risk it too much. Let's just leave it for now, but see how we are later. Maybe I'll mute for a few minutes and just no, I can't mute. My mouth is so close to the thing too that you think it would be okay. Let's try for a few minutes some AC and see what happens, because I'm just dying here. What if I can just turn the fan my way? This is just fan. This isn't even AC, and this is on low. Doesn't seem to be too much louder. I got a little VU meter. Let me turn off the swing on this thing so it's not making that swing sound. I'll wait till it comes back my way. But yeah, this is needed. There we go. I'm actually gonna try to turn on the I'm gonna see how the AC part works too, because I'm just dying in here. But hopefully, yeah, I can see the VU meter. It is quite sensitive to my voice, so I'm just gonna have this puppy really close, and hopefully this will allow me to continue. Also, I've got a water here, powered by water too. Oh, you need to hydrate, man. You need to hydrate. So where were we here? We just did all these. These were Webamp ones. And we're going to move on to this. What is this? What the heck did I do here? Ah, this is a fun one. Let's just copy this straight up. What other change? Okay, cool. It was just this file. So this is where I was telling you guys where I've changed the logic for how I do the open widths. What file was that? That was in the file entry functions, which is here. So if you remember, I had this file here that's used for keeping track of which icons go with. So like a .image file, use this icon. .jsdos, use this icon. And then same idea here for the app associations. .iso, use File Explorer, etc. Now I'm not set on this new method because I was hoping to maybe move this logic on a per app basis and not centralize it. But I'm going to keep it centralized, but if you see here, here's the new logic. So basically the reasoning was that I wanted to move this into an object so that I could use it to also know what file types can be opened with which apps. So in the case of here with an ISO, the first entry is considered the default. So ISOs by default are going to open with File Explorer, but they can also open with v86 is part of the thing. And same here with zips. So zip will also open in File Explorer by default, but if you right click, we'll do open with JSDOS as well as an option. And if I flip these around, then the defaults would change and that kind of thing. And this also is how the icons are decided. So ISO uses the image icon, so does image. JSDOS uses the compressed icon, so does zip. And I might change these in the future, but these are just simplified icons for now. And I've just changed this to be a much more simple. These functions now just basically work off of this object. So if you pass in the extension, it from the extensions tries to get the extension key here. So if you passed an image in, it would try to get this object. And it's optional chaining. So if this fails, it's just going to default to the unknown image. Otherwise, it's going to get the icon name, in this case music, and it'll be music.png instead of unknown. And same here, this is like how it was before where it returns blank if it doesn't work. So same idea, it tries to get extension, but tries to get the process, And you see it gets the 0 element here, which is the first one. So that's considered the default, basically. And I could make this a little more clear if I wanted via making it a function. So I could do something like this. Default equals like that. Oops. And then return default. And I could have something about that's kind of, oh, I can't use the word default though. Default process. Default's a protected word. So there's something nice about this too, because then it's like, there's no 0, there's no magic number. It's like, why 0? You know, usually when a programmer sees 0, they're gonna know, okay, it's like the first item on the index. But there's something nice about doing it this destructing way too, where it's like, oh, okay, that's the default process, all right. And it assigns it here so it's more clear what the default is, and then this just focuses on the destructing piece. Maybe I will do that. There's something I like about these functions that just directly return and don't have this bracketing, but there's something I like too about this destructing piece, so can't have it both ways. So I've decided to refactor that one slightly to be a little more declarative of what 0 is supposed to be, which is the default process. And I think this is still correct, so if we should be able to just work the same. So now if I open MP, so the icons are still the same. That's one good thing we can tell. Yeah, that looks the same. So if I open that, yeah, it opens. Whoa, what happened there? Was that correct? Oh yeah, because this is a JS-DOS file. But if I rename it to a zip file, then if I open it, now it opens as a zip file. And in the future, I'll have an open with option. I don't have that at the moment. But this episode we will. So we're just not there yet. Stay tuned. So that was it for this little piece. And what did I call that commit? Reorganize file extension object logic. Okay. I'm not a huge fan of that description. Let me just double check that was the whole commit. That was it. So there we go. Another one in. And we jump to the next thing. Allow open file to pick the process. I think this is kind of a setup step. Oh man, it's so hard to tell what's what here. There we go. Hopefully you guys can still hear me okay. Not too much loud humming in the background. So what have I done here? What have I done? So this hook here called use file, before you would pass it a PID file, you would pass it the PID. Let's take a peek at how it worked before. Oops. Surprise view of me. So let's see somewhere where it's being implemented. Yeah, so in both cases, use file would pass a PID. So now this open file command would just open in this process. You'd like bind it to that. But now what I've decided is let's just do this, and then open file will be where we pass the PID, basically. So same here, I think. Don't use the PID there, and instead open file will now pass the PID and has to call it like a function in this case. And it might be that the same here, or it might have to be like that. I don't think so. Maybe though, maybe. Yeah, because before I was just passing this as a function. So I think I'd have to do that to keep it as a function. Let me double check my changes here, but I think this is where I changed it here, but let's just see. Yeah, that became a function, and this became a function. Yeah, so that was all that these two changes were. And then I just had to update it here in the hook. So for the hook, basically, instead of the PID being here, I just move it into this function here. And update this type to say it gets the PID, that function. There we go. That was simple enough. And the reasoning behind that is now open file can open with another process. So that's where I can use open with to say, now that I have this open file function, open it with this PID instead of the JS-DOS PID instead of the File Explorer PID. Is the way that I've called PID this process ID. There's some confusion with the way I've named it. I'm not a super fan of part of it. Maybe I am, I don't know. So there should be 3 files changed. There we go. Yeah, I changed the 2 uses of use file, and I've changed the implementation. Allow open file to pick the process. That's better. Makes the function more useful. Allow subcontext menu. Okay. Let's paste it here first so I remember what I'm doing. And now let's go to the code where I theoretically did it. Allow open file to pick process. I just did that. So now we're at this one here. Open, allow, yeah. Ah, okay, so this is where allow subcon. Oh, this is it then. This is a big part of it. Is this the open with part too? Add open with. Okay, so the open with part's separate, but this is the part where I basically did the whole submenu idea. This is a big one. So first things first, I've made a little chevron icon, which is just a little arrow icon. I got that icon from the same place I got the other icons, which is the real source of the icons, you know, so right from the source, as they say. Components, system, menu, and I've made a file here called menu icons. Currently there's only one icon in it, which is this chevron. And I've done my own little optimizations that I always do to it. Is this on high? No, it's on low. Good. Yeah. Now it's too cold. Actually, there we go. The swinging motion needs a little WD-40, but I think it's probably better to have it. So we just did the chevron icon. That's the first little piece, the arrow. We're going to be using it here in the menu item entry. What we've done here, this is another PR where I think it's done bad. We're going to skip this first. No, let's not skip it. But let's look at this one in VS Code to see what we've done. This is the menu item entry. Menu item entry. There she is. Paste in the changes, and now let's look at those changes. So it's a decent chunk. Okay, I see. It's not so crazy. So we've taken that chevron icon. So this menu item entry is referring to this. Oh, what I just crashed there. Oh, because I just pasted all these changes. Let me undo these changes for a second here, just so I can show you. So this is the item entry. These, if you see them hovering over here, let me zoom in on this a little bit. So each one of these is an entry, and I want to add the little arrow piece. Plus, when you hover over it, I need a submenu to appear, which is not trivial. So let's see what changes I did. I added that chevron icon. I've imported the menu, and the menu is basically, it already exists. It's just this. It's the menu that is the whole menu. So I'm like nesting another version of the menu, basically. You can see here it's called menu. We're going to have to tweak this a little bit, but I'm pulling it in so that I can use it as a submenu. And I haven't figured out a recursive way to do like infinite amount of menus, only because the focus gets a little messed up. But in some ways it's quite easy to do, but getting the focus and everything right is a little harder. Also, I only need one level right now, so I'm just happy with the one level. So the menu item entry can now pass in one other piece called another menu. So if it's got a menu, it's basically got a submenu. And then what I've added here is I've had to add it. Let's see here. What have I added? I've added a hook that checks for entry ref. What's entry ref? Okay, so entry ref is the LI. We already had the LI last time. The LI is just the main list item. I've added a ref to it, a React ref here. So on the use effect, if the ref exists, if the LI exists, I'm figuring out where the offset position should be. Right. So that if you highlight over the context menu, it knows where to do the offset. Now, I could have done this on the fly, I guess. I got a message here from Dwight Kurt Schroot saying hello. Hi, Dwight. Feel free to, if you have any comments or questions along the way. I'm just working on my submenu here. So it looks like I have a hook here. Yeah, it's just recalculating whenever the offset changes, which is never. So I guess it's on load of the menu. It calculates where... What the heck is it calculating here? Okay, so for each LI entry, if it's got a submenu, it's calculating where its position is? Is that what it's doing? Set submenu offset. Okay. I guess if there's no menu, this is pointless, though. This is a waste of time. let's not do that. Yeah, let's double check here. So menu and this. There we go. So if there's a menu and the li item exists, then figure out where the submenu's offset will be for when you hover it. Now I'm not sure why this couldn't be done on the fly. I could do this on mouse enter, I guess, but then every time it enters, it's recalculating. That's also a little inefficient. So yeah, I think just calculating it when it's created is fine. And the way it calculates it is by getting the entry itself, its height and its width, and then saying that the submenu will be the x relative. So like if I say relative x is 0, that's like to the left of where the current one is. So I'm saying its entire width minus a little bit of offset. So a little bit to the back. And the offset I figured out by looking at how they look in Windows. It's basically 3 pixels. Up, 3 pixels up, 3 pixels down, I think. And we'll get to that piece where I show it. So that's all this hook is doing here. And I've added these events on the figure part of it. And the figure is the entire thing, is the icon, the text, the box, basically. So the same place where the on-click event is, I've also added an on-mouse enter and on-mouse leave. So it'll do the submenu events here. If there is no menu, then there won't be any events. Let me just flip this around. If there is a menu, there will be events. Otherwise, there won't be events. I prefer that version of it. So yeah, if there's a menu, we're gonna have an on-mouse enter and on-mouse leave to essentially work like hover, basically. So when you hover over that entry, it thinks you've entered that area, and then it's gonna show the submenu. And if you leave, it's going to not show it. But I've added a check here that if the entry, if where you left, if your mouse left to go to the submenu, then don't close it. So only in that case, when you go into the submenu, don't close it. But in every other case, if the mouse goes away, close it. And that's how it works in Windows. And then I've added a class here to know when it's active, so that if you highlight over it and then you go to the next thing, I want it to stay like highlighted, essentially. So if the menu is shown, then it's essentially active. Otherwise, nothing. And I've added this, that if there is a menu, show that little arrow icon to the right of the caption. And I've added that the menu would show up here, basically within the li item. If it says show the submenu, then show the submenu, basically, which is another menu item with this new submenu variable argument, that I'm going to pass in. And submenu basically is the same data that a menu has, where it's got items and it's got this offset information, which is the X and Y. It's got its position, which in this case is that offset that's been calculated. So that's all this one's doing, which is nothing. Now in the styled menu, we have to do a little bit of tweaking. This is the menu itself. Basically, we add a little thing here. We're going to add that if it has a submenu, then we want the submenu, or is it a submenu? So is the styled menu that's being shown actually a submenu? And if it is, then we actually need a z-index to be 1 to go above the menu. So a submenu should actually show above the menu. So that's what we'll do here. And we're also going to add that class that I was telling you guys about. Where is it here? So here, so if it hovers or if it's got the active class, then the background color should change. And for some reason, I needed to add width max content here for the submenus. I don't know if it was a position thing, if it was like, because the submenu is like positioned inside the other positioned element, but it was like squishing it. Whereas if I do this max content, it fits perfectly. So that's why I've added max content. And then I've just added a little bit of rules here for the SVG, for that chevron, basically. So it's going to be white, and eventually we'll move this all to a theme. But the arrow is going to be white. I've done some checking on the Windows version, and it's basically 13 by 13 pixels. And it's 8 pixels to the right. And we're positioning that icon absolutely. and it also is there's one margin on the top, so it moves it down slightly. So these are just my exact tweaks to get how Windows looks, basically. So we'll see that working that way. That was for the styling. Now this one here, this is for the menu itself. So for the menu, we've added that submenu prop that I told you guys about. And the way that submenu works is similar to how it was before, I think. I'm just trying to see what I had here before. Where was my items before? So before is what I had here. So right, so before I was doing the use menu hook, and I was taking in the menu here, like that, and I was saying, this is the menu. It has items, X, and Y. But that can also be a submenu. So now what I'm doing here is I do use menu, but I just take that and I call that the base menu. That's what the current context menu is. But then you could also have passed in a submenu. And that's why what I do here is I say either you take the submenu first, but if it's undefined, then you take the base menu, and then you break it into those three pieces, the item, the X, and the Y, like you were doing here. And I've also made reset a little more advanced. Same with what I did with the other one, is that we don't reset the menu if it's a parent of itself. So that's how if we're going into the submenu, don't clear it because it should stay alive, essentially. But in any other case, you would. So that's like for blurring as well. So if I click the menu item, it doesn't reset. I think that the reason I did this is that if you went into the submenu and then you clicked it, that was being considered a blur event here where I was using reset. Here I'm using reset menu on blur. And it wasn't triggering opening the open with thing. It wasn't triggering the click because blur was happening first and just resetting everything. And it didn't bubble down to the click event of the actual menu item. So that's why this was important. Otherwise, it's the same, I think. I've also defined a type here, I guess. Why? I don't know. Because before here, with reset menu, I wasn't trying to get related target. But now, occasionally I am trying to get related target. It can still be blank, because sometimes I think I use reset menu manually. Do I? Let's take a peek. Okay, yeah, I pass reset menu to each item. So that's why I want to say reset menu can just be something you just run, or it can also be an event, a focus event, and in that case it would have a related target, but it might not have anything, so be careful. And I'm also using the checking here to make sure. But yeah, related target could be nothing, so I could say related target and that. Until I get an error, I'm not going to worry about that. And then here, all I did is added that is submenu thing, which we just added in the styled piece, and that was it. And I also check for it here. So when it first loads, don't focus if it's a submenu. Okay, so I'm just going to straight up copy that as well, because we just discussed what I did there. So we'll just paste that in, and now it's changed. That was this piece here. Yeah. And what else do we need? So because I've changed menu to also accept submenu items, submenus, I need to fix it here where I'm using it in the generic context factory. Because in the generic context factory, I believe I was also using menu. Oops, yeah, I'm close. Here. So yeah, I was passing in, as part of the context factory, you can pass in a component that gets put right beside your children. And that's how I was injecting the context menu as something that lives in the context level. But I just need to clarify here now, because it's expecting a function that doesn't return any, or that doesn't have any props. And I'm okay with that. So I just do this. So it's the case where there's no submenu, basically. Because submenu is optional. But because I'm saying menu here, it's expecting a component that doesn't have optional properties like submenu. So we'll just give it a component here. Now that's another functional component that has no props, which is what it's expecting. There might be a better way to do that, but I don't think so. I don't think I care, actually, is what I mean to say. So let's add that menu piece. So it can also have a submenu that's just made up of itself. Little recursive type there. And we have to export menu state, I believe, because I actually I'm using this menu state to make up what a submenu is. And in the types, we need to define, in the style, under default sizes, I had that submenu offset, which is going to be here. So the submenu offset is 3. I've decided to start using numerical sometimes and not just string, because I actually do math with this. So I might start using this more, where I use numbers instead of strings. I think we can turn the AC off now. It's nice and cozy cold in here again. Hopefully it wasn't too noisy for you guys. So yeah, we added it here, and I'm going to add it to the definition here. But in a couple commits, we're actually going to get rid of this entire file. I've actually figured out a way to stop needing to do this. This was just a waste of time, I now realize. But for now, we'll keep doing it for a little bit longer. So that's a number. But in the future, we're not going to, but we'll do that in another commit. That was it. So with that, we should have the ability to do submenus. Now we can't test it really. We can test that we haven't broken menus. Let's see if we haven't broken menus. So if I open this, yeah, menus still work. They still look the same. That's good. But we don't have any items currently that have submenus. So we're gonna, in theory, you would test this before you commit it. But I'm not going to do that because I'm pretty confident it worked. And instead, I'm just going to move on to the open with part where we utilize it and then we get to see it. So let's do allow sub context menus. And let's double check quickly. I think we captured all the changes. I don't see any files that are complaining anymore. So yeah, let's commit that. And then let's move on to actually using the changes in this one here, open with. And that's where we kind of get the payoff from a bunch of our changes that we've recently done, the file extension thing and all that. And it's actually a really simple change. If you see here, I'm just going to copy it. It's only a 1 file change that allows us to make an entire open with concept, just based on what we've set up here. The ability to have submenus and the way that we've done extensions, that we've changed the way that extension logic works. We can now use that object to do this. So let's take a peek at the changes I've done. So we pull in those extensions that we know about here, if you remember, this little mapping. And we pull in and get the extension name function here. So now, what are we doing here? So in the use context menu, right at the start, we look at the URL that we get its extension, and we get the extension information from there. And from that, we get the process of it. And we skip the first item, that's the default, and we say everything else in the array. So it's talking about these arrays here. So it's saying, don't worry about this one, but any of these other items. So whatever other blah, 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 give me these 3 things, basically, is what I'm saying. So that's the open with. And then what I've added here, so before all that the PID was the open and the separator. And now what I've done is I've moved the separator up to the start here. Why have I done that? Does that make sense, actually? Yeah, the way that unshift works, it does. It's like you're putting the separator and then you're putting the open. So then the separator's below it. Whereas before I was doing both of them here, where I was like open and separator, put those both in the array at the same time. So now I'm saying first thing we do is put the separator in, and then we're going to put the 2 things on top. Either open or open with and open. If there's an open with, there's going to be an open, because if there's a default and other ones, then obviously the default will exist. So we'll keep open getting added, but conditionally before we add open, we're going to try to add the open with to the top of that stack. So if there is open with items, then we are also going to put those on, and they're going to have the label of open with, and it's going to be using that menu entry that I was saying. And the menu is going to go through the open with items. And as you see, it would just be right now just an array with one string called v86. And it's going to make it, and it's going to return menu items. It's going to map them into menu items, where it's going to return the icon, the label, and the action. The icon is going to be right from the process directory. The title is going to be the label. And the action is going to be open it. And that's that open file piece, remember, where we now pass the ID. So now you see how those three pieces of work have kind of come together, where we have the extensions so that we can get the open with array. We have the menu piece so that we can do submenus. And we have the open file with the ability to pass processes now. So now that we've done those three little layers of work, now when you right click, when you open a file, let's say, and we go to images. So this ISO here, if I double click the ISO, it opens as a folder. But if I right click, you see now we have, oops, this is in the way. Let me do it over here. If I double click the ISO, opens as a folder. But if I right click, now you see we have open with. And open with has the mention of it. And you see it's got a pretty nice submenu there that actually works as you'd expect. See, so mouse enter, it appears. And if I leave there, it stays open there. But if I like go off here, it goes away. So if I stay here and then I go off, then it kind of now exists. And if I click here, it'll blur off. But if I go over here, mouse enter again, and I click, you see now it opens it in v86. So now I have one file that I can open two different ways. I can open it in this emulator as an actual Linux ISO, or I can open it as an actual folder and see what the content of that Linux ISO file are as a folder structure. And I have open with there. And it's the same with, let's say, where's that JS-DOS file? It's in, let me zoom in a bit here. It is called ROMs. Where the heck is it? ROMs, here it is. I need to figure out the sorting for these folders. Right now it's a mess. There we go. So we have doom.zip, but if I right click it, it says, hey, zips, I can open zips in JS-DOS version 7. Okay, click. There we go. And then it opens Doom just like that. Or I double click and I can look at the folder structure for Doom and see there's the exe for Doom. And in the future, I might be able to run exes directly from here, but that's for another day and another discussion. But it's possible. I'm pretty sure it's possible. So that's the open with. Very simple, that part. But as you see, those three commits kind of set it up. And now we got it. So where does that get us? Open with here. Add open with two files. Nice. Nice and simple one. There's actually quite a few more features I have to add. I mean, if you see this list here, I'm surprised if we're going to get through all this, unfortunately, because I actually did so many things. Added open file location. This is another nice one. Another basic one. Looks like I had to change just two files. Nice. So the first thing I had to do was to the menu. I've decided to add the path field to use context menu. Why? I don't know. Couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you. So I'm only using it once here. So I'm also going to pass in path, which is something that's known here, but wasn't known within the context menu. And then I'm just going to copy over all the changes again. And we're going to deconstruct it together. So we're going to play the what the heck was Dustin doing game that we've been playing all night. So I pull in use processes, I get directory name, I get the shortcut extension. Here's where I needed path. I've taken the open function from processes. And now, okay, so if there's a process that it can open in, first thing I do is check, okay, but is it a shortcut? So how do I know if it's a shortcut? It's from that path. So I take the extension name path to get the shortcut extension. So this would be a .url file is what I use shortcuts for. So I say it's a shortcut and it's got a URL and the URL doesn't equal like nothing, basically. The root directory is essentially nothing. This is my method of checking if it's a shortcut, basically. So if it is a shortcut, why do I have to do this, by the way? I think the reasoning behind this is it can be a PID, but it could be opened from a direct file. So in both scenarios, it would have gotten this far. That's why I had to add this extra step to check if it's a shortcut. So if you guys remember here where I had open with that I just added, I basically added another condition before that. And if it's a shortcut, then we're not going to do open with. We only do open with for full files. Actually, this is a bug fix at the same time, because if I right click on Linux here, oh wait, what? Oh, I've already added this. Darn it. Let me unfix this. So that's how it was a second ago. Watch, if I right click Linux, you see there's an open with here that's repetitive. So I got open that opens in v86, and I got open with that opens in v86. This is it being confused because it's a shortcut. And I think, yeah, it's the logic here. The open with array. What's the logic here? The open with array gets that it's a, right, because the shortcut leads to an ISO. So the ISO gets that it can be open in these two things. But it's important that it's a shortcut, because if it is a shortcut, then the shortcuts say which process we want to open it in. So we don't want open with to show, because we've already established how we want it to open. It could be nice to still have open with, but not list the process that is the PID. I guess I could do that. Maybe from open with, I have to remove the PID would be the logic there. Because yeah, it could be nice to have open with. Okay, let's do that. Let's say console log here of the PID and the open with. I want to see if in the shortcut test, does it just look like that? So let's see here, let's refresh. So that's the shortcut right there. Okay, yeah, so the PID and the thing that's in open with are the same. So I think it makes sense that the open with array should filter out PID. And PID comes from here. I wonder if there's an easy way to do that. Maybe something really fancy. Like, could you do... No, let's not overthink it. Where's open with here? I'm just gonna... Do I want to mutate open with though? Or just filter it twice? Because here I'm checking length, and then here I'm using it again. I guess it would... Yeah, I'm just gonna have to do it that way. So I'm gonna have to change open with. Can I change open with? Is that reasonable to do that? I don't think it is, actually. Let me see. Open with dot. I want to filter it out. Let me just think here. For a shortcut in Windows, let me just try one. Let's say, yeah, like if I make a shortcut to a file in Windows, let me just try that now. Create shortcut, and then I right click the shortcut. Is there an open with menu? There is. And it actually has listed the same thing that is also the thing that it can be open with. So maybe in that reason, I actually shouldn't have had this little logic that I had, which I thought was helping, but it's actually just getting me further away from how Windows works. Let me try it with an MP3 and make sure it's the same. Yeah, it is. One thing I noticed too, actually, is this open piece is different depending on the thing. Like for an MP3 on my OS, on Windows, it says play. But I'm just always using open. Maybe I'll make another note there. Right click open to play for MP3, and so on for other ones. So, oh man, I got a little bug in here now. Darn bugs. So what was that fix I had done here? Let me bring in the code again that I just had, which I've unfortunately lost. So I have to copy it again because I have an addiction at closing folders. Oh, okay, guys, sorry, I copied it again. So let's paste in here with the change. So the change is the way I had it was now meaning that now when I click here, I just get open file location. And when I click that, it opens the right thing. Cool. That's nice. And yeah, if you see it here, now basically all I did is, this is how the code was before. Oh, let's go back to look at that change one more time, darn it. Yeah, so I just added this little logic. If it's a shortcut, then instead of doing open with, we do this, where we say open file location, and Yeah, we just add a menu item where the label is open file location and the action is to open with File Explorer the directory name of the URL. Right. Okay, so the question is, if we want to keep open with for the shortcuts, what needs to change here? Does that mean I don't care if it's a shortcut? Well, I care if it's a shortcut for doing this, but I guess it doesn't have to be an else if here. There, like that. Maybe I'll separate them too. So if it's a shortcut, add the shortcut thing, and then add open with. Is that the correct order? So for Windows, it's like open. Oh man, I'm sorry guys. Oh, I'm karate chopping my microphone here. Open file location, then open with. So let's see if that's what I get with this order. I'm not even gonna think, I'm just gonna see. Open, no, wrong order. So let's just move this here. There we go. So that's the order that it should be. Open file location, open with. Looks a little repetitive, but I mean, this is the functionality that Windows has. And maybe I'll intermingle some other stuff in here, but it's all handy, honestly. I mean, this isn't handy to me. Windows has it, but to me, this isn't useful. Maybe I should just remove it. I wanted the logic because this is useless. Open, this does the same thing. So yeah, I don't like the repetitiveness of that. It's easy enough to fix. I just need to filter open with, and I'm just debating whether make a new variable or not, because it's not that I'm lazy, it's that I consider it inefficient, actually. Like, I would almost rather just filter twice, but filtering's messy too. So is there a way to destruct the array where you can remove a key? I don't think there is. No, I don't think so. I'm trying to think of I guess the filter function is the best one I can think of. So let's just do it. So let's say open with unique PIDs. Open with unique. Or let's just call it open with filtered. No? Or let's say possible. I want to make it a little cleaner then if we're going to tweak this. I like the open with here. Open with filtered. I guess. I don't want to spend all day thinking about a variable name. So open with filtered, we just take open with and go dot filter. And what is it called? A process ID or possible process? I don't want to use, well, can I use PID twice? No, because then I'm shadowing it here. I don't want to do that. I could just say ID. I'm not using ID. And it is an ID, so ID doesn't equal the PID, actually. There we go. So that's the one we want to use. And if we double check now, there we go. So there's not that. But if we were to go into our extensions here and add another one, so let's say for ISO, we also can open it in JS-DOS, let's say. Now if we right click here, there we go. Now we have that. That's useful. Yeah, so now we have this one, but hey, there's another one it can open. Okay, I'll list it then. Yeah, but if there isn't, then don't show me it. It's a waste of a menu. But open file location works now. Okay, so what did I change in that? Right, so I actually did two things, I guess. I did the open with filtering and I added the open file location. Well, let's just list it as two things. Or yeah, I don't care. Open file location context and filtered open with. There we go. Committed. Like I'll be one day. Ha 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 ha. All right. So let's just put that here. Add open file location shortcuts plus this other thing. Oh, where are we? Hour 38. It's getting hot again too. It got hot quick. So refactor add file to zippable. Yeah, I think this just was a little tweak that I did, just a little refactor I was proud of. So let's just get it in there as well. Yeah, I'm just going to copy it and we're just going to look at it. I think the way that I discovered this is I've been using something called Sonar Cube a little bit to try to do some linting, and I think it found this as like a possible refactor. And I was like, you know what, you're right. So it's in the zip functions. It's the function that I'm using to make like this zippable object. And I'll put them side by side here. Oops. I didn't do that correctly. Is it just that I changed? I think it is, but let's just paste it in here and look at the diff instead. Oh, it's getting hot again. I gotta turn the AC on again. It says it's 92 Fahrenheit in my room, according to the AC, which sounds hot. I don't actually, it should be in Celsius. I actually have no idea what Fahrenheit is as a Canadian, so. Nice. My lights flickered, but nothing died. I have so much energy usage in my room right now that I'm pretty happy nothing's died, but I don't want to jinx it by saying that. So yeah, I just changed this one function, and I basically just made it smaller. So if you see before, it was like I was creating the thing here. I was doing a reduce, but the walked path was like an empty string. I think I just shrunk it here because I actually wanted, what I returned was the object. So I should have reduced with that in mind already. So in the new one, that's what I've done. Is I've done the reduce is where I do zippable data right from the start. And I say I'm gonna return this directly as the object. And what have I done? Okay, so this was just kind of, I just turned this from an equals thing into a different way of doing it here, basically, where I return the object and I just create it on the fly, where I use the object key syntax to say if it's the end of the path. Basically the same exact thing that was happening here. I just shrunk it, so we're not going to go deep into what I did there. You guys can look into it, but I can't explain it any better than that. And I didn't explain it very well, I know. Next one is a quick one, hopefully. Add missing update def. I think this is just something that got overlooked. Yeah, I should have had an update files there. On use files, I guess. Yeah, I don't know how this got missed and how I didn't get warned about it at some point. But definitely needs to be there. You want all those dependencies. You don't want to have any missing. So use second constant. I think that is referring to seconds constant. Yeah. This is on the use peak window. Last episode I did like a little, when you hover over that it does a little peak window. I think I changed the amount of time it is too. I reduced it. Let me see here. Use window peak. Use window peak. Oops, that's use window size. I got too many use window things now. Use window peak. I'm gonna rename this later on too. Someone pointed out the other day that it's not P-E-A-K, it's P-E-E-K. So I'll do a name change in a momentarily here. So all I changed here was I imported the millisecond in seconds, which is 1,000, and instead of hard coding in 1,020 250 here, I've just said every second make a new frame, millisecond in seconds, and every fourth of a second, or no, how does this work? Oh yeah, when you hover over the item, after a fourth of a second, start trying to show frames, is basically my thinking there. And going back to the commits, I think I changed this timing at some point. Didn't I? Slower peak. What did I change slower peak to? Yeah, I changed this to every half of a second instead of a fourth of a second. So let's just do that piece now too. There we go. Use seconds constant and wait longer for peak. There we go. So I don't know if I said shorter, but it's actually going to longer. So instead of waiting 250 milliseconds, it's going to wait 500 milliseconds, which is what I wanted. So that's the use second constant, and the shorter peak is somewhere in here. What did I call it in the commits? I don't even know. Slower. And did I mention that here? I didn't even mention it here for some reason. Okay. So that's that one. Next, where am I? I've lost track of where I am here. Here. No more zoom for wallpaper. Yeah, I think this is a minor one. Oh wait, why does it have here that I did something else? Oh no, I jumped ahead here. Here I am. No more zoom from wallpaper. So this is a minor change. This is actually another two-piece change that I forgot, which I'll do right now. Yeah, the optional piece. So for the wallpaper, for Vanta.js, I had a 90% zoom. And if you look here at the wallpaper, if I reload, you see there's that zoom out bit. I've actually decided I prefer it to not have that. So I'm just going to remove zoom here. And now you see it just loads, boom, right away. I almost feel like it just feels a little snappier. And I'm okay that the triangles are a little bit bigger anyways. And we'll just make zoom optional. We'll keep zoom as a possible thing, but I'm not going to use it for now. I'm just going to keep it straight the level it's at. So yeah, in the commit here, I didn't add the type. Oh, I did it in two pieces, I think. Yeah, here we're doing those two pieces as one. So no more zoom from wallpaper. Or let's just say zoom from wallpaper is optional and unused. There we go. Another little minor tweak. I'm going to push what I've got so far. I've got 16 commits. I'm just going to throw it out there just for safety, you know, in case all the electricity blows from my AC here. So next one up is convert styling to simpler types. This one is one that is nice. This is one I'm happy about. So this is where I was saying where I've completely gotten rid of this old method I was using. So before I was doing all this where I was actually defining each little bit of the type, and what I've realized I can do is actually just import the objects as types and just say type of for everything. And then it's just going to use it. So then if I change something in the default, because that's what I'm pulling in here is the default one. If I change anything, it'll just use default. So it's so much more elegant. And these are the improvements I absolutely love. When it's like, oh, I don't need to do this at all. So all of this, how long was this file? This file was 99 lines. There, now it's 15 lines. And it does exactly the same thing. So now when you see colors, you see it knows all that stuff. Because it was all part of the object. So, and the objects were what I already set here. Like in the example with sizes, if you remember where I had set that offset. Now when you hover over sizes, it knows about that offset. It knows it's numeric. So that's way better. Convert styling to simpler types. Done. Convert taskbar entry to fixed width. All right. I don't even remember what the heck I did there. So this is everything I did in one day. And then I did more another day. I did more another day. Typically I do these, some of these I do all in the same day actually, but it's like I might have done these and committed a bunch and then forgot to push these and then push them the next day, I think. Yeah, sometimes I forget to even commit it locally for a long time. So can't really trust the timestamps anyways. Convert taskbar entry to hover. What did I do here? Oh, this looks complicated, but I don't think it is. So I think what this solved, let's copy this and do the diff. Do the diff dance, as nobody calls it. No one in their right mind would call it that. But I want to see a better diff from VS Code to see what actually changed. Yeah, a lot less change there. If you see there, it looks a lot cleaner. So why did I do this? You may ask yourself, and I'm asking myself that. But can I answer it is another question. So I've moved the background color. There's no more background color here. Now it's just the border, the flex. Whoa, why does this look so wonky? Oh, because I have a lot of this stuff behind it before now. Ah, okay, I remember now. So let's explain what this is that I'm doing here. So if you see here the menu, how it's got the blue bar at the bottom, and if I hover, it has that effect. But watch here, when I hover in, you see how I'm right there. Huh. Okay, yeah, watch. You see how I'm already on the item there, but it didn't trigger. It should have triggered there, but it doesn't trigger here. It triggers after you get in a little bit, which is not what I want. And another issue is that the way I'm currently doing this effect, you see how the blue bar gets bigger on the outsides? It goes like a little bit. The way I'm doing that currently was, if you look here, is I was actually setting the width different of the main element itself. And now what I've done is I put that stuff behind a pseudo element, a before here, and I'm doing the hover based on that. So now the actual bar, the little blue bar that does this, and the coloring of the hover effect is being done by a pseudo element now that's behind it. So now that the pseudo element is what has this background color of active, if it's the foreground element, and basically all the things that the main element was doing before, I just moved to a pseudo element so that the main element always has the same height. Or same width, sorry. And another reason why this is useful is it was messing me up when it came to animating the element, because the element can kind of size in and size out. And I believe with framer motion, I was having an issue. If as it was sizing in, your mouse happened to be there, it was like getting all twitchy because it was trying to do the resizing as well. And that effect only really looks good after it was full size. And this solves it basically. So you see here, I save this, and now when I go here, oh, this is because I just fixed this. Let me undo this. That's when it's undone. So, right, now here's a better example. So you see here, watch. So you see where my mouse is right there. If you see my cursor, where it is right there should already be triggering. So you see here, I'm in the thing now and it's triggered, but if I go out of it, then when I go back in, it didn't trigger there. That's not like Windows. Windows, even if you're outside of where the blue bars are, as long as you're in the 160 pixels that is the taskbar entry, it should do that effect. So that's why the changes I did here fix that. Basically, that's pseudo element, like I said. And then I added a left 4 pixels here. Why? Because the figure itself before was being pushed 4 pixels to the right by the margins, but now it's not being moved because I stopped using margins on the base element. So now I just have to say, hey, figure, you need to move 4 to the left because you're no longer having your margin move for you. But it's still visually the same. It's just that now when I hover over, it does it where I expect it to be. Otherwise, you see the blue bars moving the same, the effects going the same. So visually it looks the same, but now I'm using the pseudo element. And that's going to help me for animations. It's going to help me for being able to hover from the corners. The base element no longer is resizing. It's just better that way. So I was pretty happy that I did that. Convert taskbar entry hover to fixed width. Oops. There. Nice. So yeah, just turned it into a pseudo element. And if we just look at the code straight, you see now it's this pseudo element here that's doing a lot of work. And this thing is just very straightforward, very just max width. And now the pseudo element is the one that's doing all the stuff that the other one was doing before. All right, commit that. Move this a little bit. Next one, focus on URL change. Right, so that's another thing. If you see here when you go to the browser here. So if we have, let me zoom out a little bit. We open the file explorer here, which is in the wrong position at the moment. We open music, also in the wrong position. So if I open Winamp here, and now we put it to the back, and if I open up an MP3, you see Winamp didn't jump to the front, but if we look at Winamp, it did load the MP3 right there. So what we want is when we double click the MP3, we want it to load to the front. And the code for it is quite trivial, I believe, if I remember correctly. I think it's like extremely simple. Yeah, I basically just have to monitor for a URL change on the use focusable, which is another cool thing with where we're using the use focusable, is that this will allow it to work for Windows and for non-window apps, just by that simple little addition. So here in processes, we're just going to also add the URL, and then we're not even going to use it on the effect here. We're just going to add it to the list. So now if the URL changes, just re-trigger this, even though this isn't part of the URL, or the URL is not involved in that. Okay, so let's try it again. So now, let me just clear these windows up that are all over the place. So we got Winamp here. We got our music. And now we put a folder over top Winamp and we double click the MP3. There we go. It popped it to the front. So that's what we wanted. So where is that? Focus on URL changes. Nice. Another simple one, code-wise, but it has a useful change and it just gets us closer to being like Windows. Size position fixes for taskbar entry. Oh, I don't know what the heck that means. Let's take a peek. Here it is here. Hopefully it's simple. Huh. I think I had the sizing wrong. Oh, right. The way that I have the code right now, the pseudo element doesn't work. If the thing gets too small, the pseudo element was staying at its width. So I need the pseudo element to be resized based on the parent element. So to do that, I've gone position relative here. Let's go to the styled taskbar entry. I'll show you what I'm talking about actually, so you can see where it's busticated here. I'll move the dev tools to the right, and then we can show you here. So you see here when it's foreground how it's square like that, but watch, if I shrink this more, there, you see how it's going over top of the other element. It should be squished to the same size, but the pseudo element thinks it's still the full allowable size. So we're going to do position relative instead of unset, I think, or initial is what it is right now. So we'll say the taskbar entry's position is relative, and that will allow us to set the width differently here. So now we can, now when we say 100% width, before if we did 100% width, it fills up the whole taskbar. But now that it's position relative on its parent, now when we do 100% width or 100% minus 8 pixels, then it'll be properly on the thing we expect. And here now this can just be 100%. And here something needed to change as well, I think. On the figure, I added margin bottom of the border size. Why did I do that? Huh. I'm trying to understand that change. Margin bottom of the border size. Let's comment this out for a second to try to understand that one. There's also another change here, which was this one. Let's not do those two changes and see what happens. Oh, okay. So I can see here there's like a... Why is it doing that? I think it's not considering the border as part of the height now with this position relative. So I think that's where just saying that to the figure that it should have a margin bottom that's the same as the border size. Oh, I think this is a fix for a different mistake. I think this is a fix for the previous change where I went to a pseudo element. I think when I went to a pseudo element and I moved the 2 pixel blue border into the pseudo element, it made the file icon entry text no longer be adjusted based on that. So it actually moved 2 pixels up, I think. It moved 2 pixels down. And then this adjustment is moving it back up. So this is just fixing the previous change. And for that reason, I'm actually going to do that in a second. I'm not going to do that one. That's not relevant to... Oh, wait. But if position relative... Okay. Yeah, there's 2 different things going on here, I guess. Because why... Is that where place content centers fixes it? Huh. Now I'm interested because if you guys see, there's like a little bit of excess space below the entry. I don't know when that occurred or how I let that slip in, but I'm trying to understand it in the context of this little change here, because usually my changes are more isolated. Okay, so this is that fix for that previous thing I said. this width thing does fix the issue partially, but I don't understand the place content piece yet. This piece here. So let's just focus on this change, the position relative and the width thing. Let's just see if that fixed the original issue that I had. So now when we foreground Webamp and we resize this, yeah, there we go. Now the size stays the way you'd expect. So that's correct. But I can see a consequence here of doing position relative is that I seem to have some excess space now. Let me undo this for a second and see if that is the case. Yeah. So I think there's another fix that fixes this, is the issue. So let's just accept this for now and make a note about it and see if I fix it in my next couple commits. But we fixed the width issue, so let's just note that. Where was that here? That was here. Convert taskbar entry to hover to fix width? No, that wasn't it. It was this one here. Size and position fixes. Okay, so let's just say width fix for below 100%. Let's just say width 100% fix for taskbar entry. There we go. So that's the width 100% piece. That's one piece of the puzzle. I think setting position relative, let me double check this here. If I hover over this now, I seem to have lost peak altogether. I think this caused more. What if I remove position relative? Where'd peak go? Have I just lost the ability to do peak? Was it related to this change? What have I done? Huh. Interesting. Well, if I break things, then I'll fix them in the next episode. But now when I hover over here, I'm not getting my little peak effect. If I hover over here... Oh, I'm still getting it here. That's weird that I didn't get it in the other window. Maybe I haven't refreshed that page in a while. Let's try that again. Let's go here, refresh the page, then open the window. Okay, there's peak. So, right. So you see when I did position relative, it moved that peak window to the left. Oh. There's a little bit of space, too, above the peak. Maybe that was what this also fixed. Let's double check that. Let's rename this fix back to what it said before. And let's see. So let's go back to the browser here where I had that change. So what if we add place content back? And we add the margin bottom thing back. Where did that go? Here. Does that fix... Oh, sorry guys. I was in the code and I forgot to switch. So I just added those two little changes back. And now let's see when I hover over peak. Still looks a little off. I've kind of messed it up, it looks like here. Okay, so the centering is working now. So that place content center fixed the positioning of peak window to be properly centered with the item. But this space above the item and this space below, I'm not happy about those. We're gonna have to resolve those in a minute. And I'm gonna make a note about them. So let's once again not do this because this is an unrelated change. But these weren't. The 100% and the place content will also keep because that was fixing the position of the peak. So size position fixes for taskbar entry. That was an okay description for that actually. And now let's make a note here. Peak is 2 pixel too high. Taskbar entry is 2 pixels too high. So I'm pretty sure I fixed this in a bit, but in case we don't, we noted that because clearly if I hover over this here, I can see that there's a little bit of space between the taskbar entry and peak window, and also on the blue bar, there's a little bit of space below it. And I think I added that when I did position... the position relative thing. Let me remove that for a sec and see if that goes away. I mean, the width thing's busted now. But yeah, that actually fixes the other thing. So we're going to see if I fix that in a minute. But for now, we did that. And now I wanted to do this as a separate commit, this little piece. So this here is going to be fix taskbar entry icon / text position, which got messed up when I added that pseudo element. There we go. Now type declare tweaks. Oh, those are always fun. Tweaks. Where are those? Type declare tweaks. Ah, yeah. So this is more of that sonar linting that I did. This was just some real basic cleanups that they suggested, and I thought, you know, they were decent suggestions. So this actually, at some point, maybe I needed that, but I actually don't need that anymore. This already is expecting that, so that was already correct, because I'm checking it here, and I expect it there. It knows what it is. At some point, I defined that for some sensible reason. And then the other 2 or 3 were like here. This should actually be a different syntax. Instead of having it like that, you should always do the as. I mean, says who, you know, but it was a good point. I prefer it, so, because I'm pretty much doing as everywhere else, where you go object as this thing, instead of this triangle bracket system. The triangle bracket system is more for another part of typing. But you can do it the way I did it. It's just that the sonar linting suggested I don't do it that way, and I kind of agreed that, like, hey, you know what, sure. So there we go, that's cleaned up. Added foreground styling animation. I don't remember what I did here, so let's take a peek. Slower peek we already did. Adding that. Here's where I think I might have fixed that little pixel space issue. And what I've also done here is I've added a cool little focus effect. So if you look at the window here, and I open a window, you see when I hover over that you get that little width thing, and the color completely changes on the background to like a little bit darker. But then when I click to focus, you see it gets much lighter, and it does the same thing where it does that resizing when I focus on the window. But what I've noticed that Windows also does, when you focus on a window, not only does it do the blue bars getting bigger and the color changing, but it transitions it. It goes, whoop, like it comes up. So we're just going to add that here, and it's just this simple change, actually. And I'm hoping it also fixes that other issue that we just had. So it's the style taskbar entry again, same place. And I'm just going to paste it in here. So the change that I did was I got rid of the border, the bottom border from the taskbar entry. Yes. I had a transparent border still. That's the mistake. I still had a transparent border that I was using when I didn't have a pseudo element to add extra spacing, and that was messing things up. So I don't need that transparent one. And then I can just say on the pseudo element, go right to the bottom and have your height be, if the item is foreground, then the height of the pseudo element is 100% of the taskbar entry. Otherwise, it has no height at all. And for the transitioning, if it's a foreground event, then we transition the height and we transition the width. But if it's not a foreground event, then we only transition the width. And I've also changed the speed slightly. So when you just hover, a typical transition event happens in 1/10 of a second. But if you do foreground and it has to go up also, then it's a little bit longer, a 1/5 of a second, I guess. And now if you hover, it's 100%. And in the case of it not being foreground, only width would be transitioned. So you won't see, if you just hover, it'll just change instantly from 0 height to 100. And what's this margin bottom thing? Didn't I just do this? Oh man. So I messed this up, I guess. Or did I? I think I double messed this up. It looks like I had the margin bottom on the caption, but it should have been on the figure? Yeah, I had this a little wonky. It's weird. My last 2 commits were like contradictory slightly, I think, but this looks more correct. Let's take a peek. So yeah, already we can see it's more correct. No longer below the blue bar. Now there's no longer that extra piece, and same with peak. It's also fixed here between peak. And now when I hover, it doesn't lose it. So you see here, the effect is still the same, but watch. Now when I click the window, it's gonna, whoosh. There, you see, that's cool. So, but if you just hover, it doesn't do that. And if you click, you don't really notice it. Yeah, if you click, you don't notice it. I don't think you're supposed to. But if it's unselected and you pick it, then it has that effect. That's cool. I like it. And that's more like how Windows is, which is always the goal. Another one bites the dust. So added foreground styling animation. Yep. To taskbar entry. Be a bit more specific there. R&D tweak and fix. What did I do? Who's to say? Let's take a peek. R&D tweak and fix. I don't know what I did. Okay, let's just copy this. This is another simple one. I think I do know what I did, but do you know what I did? I need you to tell me what I did so that I can tell you if you're correct. R&D window index. Here it is here. And the only other little change was passing the z-index properly, right? We'll do that in a second. So basically what I did, before I was declaring that R&D window could take CSS properties in general, and then I was only passing z-index. I've realized that, hey, you know what? I only really need z-index. So now I've just said R&D window, just take in z-index instead of taking in styled CSS properties. And then here we're going to figure out, wait, why am I doing minimized here? Ah, yes, this is another wonky little bug fix at the same time. When I minimize the window, my section window animates down, but the R&D draggable resize window is actually still there as like an invisible div. And while I was testing, I opened like 20 windows and minimized them all, and I realized that these invisible divs were actually in the way of me clicking certain things. So they actually still are kind of fake there. I can show you one of them now. Watch here. So this window here, watch. Oh, what happened? Oh man, because I just changed the code. I think I messed something up. Oh, right. Let me fix the code. And oh, but if the code's fixed, well, even if the code's fixed, you're still going to see it. So first, before I demo it, let me just tell you there were these invisible windows, and let me just finish explaining the fix. So now if I'm minimizing, then I added to the styling that I want to disable pointer events. So I'm not going to, so the boxes are still going to be invisibly there, but they're no longer going to be affected by mouse clicks. So basically, if it's minimized, no pointer events, otherwise all pointer events. And I'm extending that on style, whereas before here I was just passing style straight along. Now I make my own style object inside R&D window, where I use the z-index that gets passed in, plus the pointer event. So let's just see where R&D window is being called. Which is right here. I'm going to turn the AC off again to breathe. So right, instead of style here, we're just going to straight up pass the index. A little bit cleaner, a little bit less information. And that was all there was to the change. So let me just show you what I was talking about here. So this is working fine. Now if we inspect, oops, that's not inspect. There we go. We inspect this piece of the window. Watch, when I minimize, you see it's still kind of fake there. And what was happening is, let's say you'd open up another window here like this one, and then I would minimize this one. Now you see how that fake one is kind of, or that invisible one is there? I wouldn't be able to, like if I was here and I went to click that, it wouldn't click it. It wouldn't have focused there because it would have been clicking this instead. But now it's got the pointer events none, as you can see. So if I don't have that, now watch. So I click there, it focuses. If I click off, now watch, I click here. You see it doesn't work because this fake window is here. But if I were to minimize this and close it, now when I click here, it works. And in general, it works now because we just fixed it. So we got that fixed here. We've added z-index. We pass z-index now and we do our pointer event thing. So that was like a double fix actually. How did I call that? Yeah, R&D window tweak and fix. I undersold it, but I'm happy with it. It's a good fix because that was a little bug that I hadn't caught before. So let's commit that one. It's another good one. I'm happy with that one. This is a cool one. So add cover art for icons. This is something I noticed where my MP3s were by default in Windows, they would actually use the album art for the icons. And I figured out, hey, it's actually not that hard to do that, because I've already have this library that's parsing the ID3 information, and it turns out it's also getting the picture for me. So great. So let's use it. It's not even that much code, as you can see here. So it's just part of the use file info, which honestly is getting a little bulky, this file. I'm going to have to eventually go through this and turn it into some more generalized functions. But for now, let's just add to it. And let's just see what I added here. So if we see here, I've added that parse buffer, a command called parse buffer from the music metadata browser. That was the library that I was already using to get other information. So we already had the library. And basically, I just added another condition that says if it's an MP3, then we read the file, just like we do in the same as in this other situation here, where if it's an image, it would read the file and then try to use the image itself as the icon. And that's what's happening in the favicon here. You see how that icon, that's actually getting the image and making an image out of it. And that's what I want to do here as well. Interestingly, I'm not using error. I probably should. I should say if there's no error and there's a picture. Yeah, let's do that. Then we're using error. Wait, why did this happen? Oh, okay, that's fine. There we go. So yeah, I grab the file, and then I do the typical parse buffer, just like we do in the other command to get the ID3 information. Then with the metadata here, we do this complicated command that I guess this could have been here. I guess I could just put this here. No harm, no foul. Let's do that. Let's minimize, let's shrink it a bit, and let's try to see what Prettier does with this. Okay, that doesn't look so bad. And let's even make this one function then too. Don't need these unnecessary functions. There we go. So that's all it does now. So read the file, parse the buffer, and then we remove this stuff from the metadata. And what I'm doing here, the metadata has an object called common, and within it, it has another object called picture. And that picture has an array of all the different picture objects within the ID3 tag information of the MP3. I'm just going to consider the first one as the one that we'll use as the picture. Typically, that was what it was. So we'll call this the picture and try to extract that out. And we have all these defaults here in case it turns out this is undefined. And then just like we do here, where we say get file info by file extension. And in this case, we say if there's an error, we use the photo icon. Otherwise, use this. Here I kind of flipped it, but maybe I won't. Maybe I'll do it this way. If there's an error, oops. No, actually this is fine, because both these have to be true for this to occur. So if there's no error and there's a picture, then use the buffer of picture.data. Otherwise, use the music icon, which was already the default for MP3s. So that's basically it. That's all I had to change. And now we can test it out. I'm going to just drag a bunch of random MP3s that I have on and see what happens. See if some of them have album art. So I'll drag 4 of them on. Boop. And what happened? Oh, there we go. So a few of them had album art and it worked. Felt a bit slow to me though, but let's just try a clear setting here. Refresh, because I don't think it should be that slow. I think my hard drive, my 5 terabyte hard drive literally was laggy to read the MP3s before it sent them. So let's try again now that they've been read. So I drag, boop, boom. Yeah, really fast. So there you go. So cool. A couple of them, this Alien Ant Farm one and this Acon Lonely, it grabbed the image from the file itself and gets to show it like that. So you can click that and then you see Acon Lonely and we can play it. And it's pretty cool, pretty functional there. And I mean, you could just keep grabbing them, and I bet a bunch of them are going to have album art. Yeah, this one has album art too. So that's kind of a cool little thing to get some more visuals in there. Probably not super performant, but that's fine. I think it's reasonably efficient because I am clearing the buffer. What am I doing? Let me double check this. Buffer to URL. Oh, I think I am, because I have a thing here that clears the buffer URLs for any image icon that's being used, I believe. Let me double check that. Common elements, the icon element. Clean up buffer URL. Yeah, here we go. When the icon loads, I have a use effect that when the icon's deleted, that's when it clears it. Right. Yeah, otherwise it was causing issues with the peak window, because when peak window would go, it would go to request all that stuff again from the DOM to make a picture. And if I'd already cleaned the buffer URL on load, then it wouldn't be able to show it a second time. So, but I fixed that last time, so let's not explain that again. Even though I just did, so it's too late. Add cover art for icons. Dunsies. Stop enter from triggering buttons. Yeah, I think it's funny. This was happening last episode and I put it on my notes, but I actually realized in the fix that I had dealt with this incorrectly and it just didn't work in certain conditions. So basically all that I had to do, I'd tried to fix this with an on key up check. That on key up don't do anything, but it turned out in some scenarios, for some reason, it should have been on key down. So I don't know why in my tests I thought that would work, or I could be, I don't know. It's almost confusing. Like looking at this and turning and just realizing that flipping that fixed it. Actually, let's show you it broken first too. So if we go to the browser here and I open a folder, let's see if I press enter now, nothing happens, but watch. If I click the taskbar entry, click it, and now watch, if I press enter, see it opened it again. I don't want that. Same issue happens, let's say I click maximize. Now if I click enter, you see the enter button has become an on-click event to whatever the focused element is. And the focused element in this case is the maximize button. So and I thought that this was fixing that because I have the generic button here and I had on key up, don't do anything. But I guess it's on key down. I don't know why I ever thought it was on key up. So let's try that again. So now when we maximize and I press enter, there we go. Nothing happens. Yeah, that's what I want because that was causing an issue where, like, let's say Doom was here and I click Doom to like restore it and then start playing. If I click enter, it was minimizing it again because the focused DOM element was still the taskbar entry. Or no, that doesn't sound correct though, to be honest. So it's kind of weird that it worked that way. But anyways, this fixed it. So I'm not going to think about it too hard. Stop enter from triggering buttons. Yeah. At least partially, that's going to partially fix it. So here are some really easy ones. This is a no-code one here. Lib upgrades. So I basically just upgraded a bunch of the libraries. Right, this is actually, this looks like a CSS change, but this is just recompiling JS-DOS. The new JS-DOS has a CSS file and it only had this one change. Otherwise, these are all the files. So JS-DOS, I got the latest JS-DOS. I got the latest WASMs for it and everything. I got the latest V86, the latest Webamp, and I'm just going to download all these and I'm just going to copy them in. Because we're not going to... Basically, the way I got these is just how I got them the first time originally, basically. Actually, for Winamp, I've compiled it this time, whereas last time I didn't compile it. So I'm going to use this little tweak fix here for JS-DOS, because why not? So actually, I'll just download that file too. Heck, why not? So let's just go download all these together. Raw, save, enter. Oh, I like it when it's a download button. That's a little handier. Raw, save, enter. Download. Raw, save, enter. This isn't tedious at all. Raw, save. Oh, that one actually looks wrong. I need to fix that one because there shouldn't be any source maps. So that's actually nice that this tedium actually made me catch a potential bug that I probably let slip in last time. So I'm just going to open up my libs folder. I'm going to switch to the code again. I'm going to open up public libs and I'm going to open it in Explorer. So you guys aren't going to see it necessarily, but I'm just going to start updating those libs with the files I downloaded. Just by a simple drag and drop. So I'm going to replace the Webamp one. I'm going to replace the V86. V86 had several here. Yeah, the library file and the main WASM file have changed. And then for JS-DOS, quite a few things changed. The CSS, the main DOSBox file, pretty much everything. There we go. So looking at the files here, you see the CSS change was just that one minor one. And then these other ones are pretty massive. So I'm actually not going to look at them in VS Code because if I look at them in VS Code, unfortunately my bracket colorizer plugin tries to colorize this like messed up minimized file and it just makes an absolute mess of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this in File Explorer. And then I'm going to open up that JS file in Notepad, and I'm just going to delete these two source map references that I had that were in it, because we do not want references to source maps because we just don't have them. They're going to be considered failed requests and they're just pointless. So I've deleted those from the file, and I'm just going to make sure I didn't have any in any other files that I copied over, because that's something that happens sometimes with libs, is that they have the minified ones will have a source map. But if you don't want the source map, you don't care about it for production or whatever, then the source map is just a wasted request where it fails. It causes a little console error and it's just gross. It's just vulgar. So we've upgraded the libraries, and I'm going to refresh this here, and we're just going to make sure everything still works basically, because we just changed a bunch of libraries. So simple enough to test. Does Webamp still work? Looks like it still does. Does Linux still work? That's v86. And does DOS still work? That's Doom. Yep. It's a little small, I know. That's something that needs fixing. That's another note on the wall. I already have it. But if you guys see any bugs, feel free to mention them. I mean, people don't mention as many bugs as I know I have, but I guess I know the cracks. I see the cracks. So there we go. We upgraded those libs. It's nice to get those out of the way. Updated FS for new libs. Now that I have no idea what the heck that means. What did I do there? Ah, that's the build command. We'll do that at the end. Basically, I just want to run the build fs command just to update those libs and get the latest modified dates and stuff. Not that I'm even showing modified dates yet, so this is super unimportant. We'll put it at the bottom, and I might not even do it. But I think it'll get done in one of these next steps I'm about to do. So moving on, we got this Sonar thing. So there's a whole service called Sonar Cube where you can scan your code, and I actually went and got the Docker image of it and did it myself locally. Because yeah, it's free, and you can download this tool, and it'll have this whole interface where you can kind of look at all the little bugs that you've got. But I also found out that it has an ESLint plugin that actually does a decent amount of the same results. So I figure, hey, just have the ESLint plugin, and that'll help me find most of the bugs anyways. So let us change the ESLint file here with those new configurations. And we need to install the package. Let me just try to remember the name of it here. It's called ESLint plugin Sonar. So we'll do yarn add -- dev, because it's a dev dependency, ESLint plugin Sonar. And that's going to install itself as expected in the package file, and it's going to update the lock file. We can close that now. Now let's look at what I changed in the ESLint. So I added the plugin, and this is just what the instructions said to do if you go to their package page. Added the plugin to the extend rules alphabetically in this case. I added the Sonar.js to the plugins. And this is a completely unrelated thing I did that I'm going to not do here, and I'll do in the next thing. I'm going to put this here. Yeah, that's another piece, but let's not worry about that just yet. Or maybe we should. Well, this is the Sonar piece, so let's just do this separately. So I've disabled one rule here called cognitive complexity, because I have quite a few files with cognitive complexity, and I know about them. Maybe at some point in the future, I'd like all these rules that are off to be on, but I need one by one to solve them, and some of them aren't solvable necessarily, or even my fault. But for now, I'm going to just keep them open. So let's just see if we can break up this Sonar linting thing into those two pieces. Because I think here is where I did some fixes based on the results they gave me. And we'll do those in a second here. But yeah, I'm going to do the commits separately. So this was just adding the Sonar thing. So now if we do an ESLint scan. Oh, here's another cool thing I found that I've started using. Is in VS Code, your npm scripts are just listed right here. So I can actually just run the scripts from here. So ESLint is right there. I just click, and it just runs ESLint. So ESLint's going to find a bunch of bugs from Sonar.js's new rules, which I'm happy for it to find them. They're pretty minor ones for the most part, but we're going to go through them and resolve them. But first, let's commit this thing where we just added the Sonar scanning rule. So that was this piece here, Sonar rule fixes. So let's split this into two things. Add Sonar ESLint scanning. And then we're going to also have the import type rule. added import type rule. We'll do that next. And then we'll do this. Actually, no, we'll do the sonar rule fixes next. And we'll do the type thing at the end, after that. So there's added sonar ESLint scanning. That's just tweaking the ESLint file and adding the library. Commit that. Now, next piece to the puzzle is fixing some of these things that it failed on. Let's take a look at what it says. So in 2 cases here, it wants me to immediately return the function. Let's look at what that is first. And I can just see them here, and I'll explain them to you. So let's go find that code there. So basically here it's just saying this open file is like it declares it and then it just dumps it in here. That's a waste. Now, typically I don't do it this way. That's why I like when SonarLint finds these kind of things, because these are the inconsistencies. So in 2 cases, I wasn't just directly returning the function when possible. So nice that it was only 2 times, and let's just go fix them right now. That was one of them. And the next one was here on double click. So yeah, on click and then just returning on click right away. So we'll just make this a little simpler. And that also cuts it down here. We don't need to do the type a second time because we've already said that that's what's being returned here. So there we go. And it still completely works as is. So we'll say this is immediately return functions when possible. We'll call that the first 2 fixes. And I'll close some of the stuff in the way. So I'll just call that the first one. Immediately return functions when possible. And the next fix, this one is almost debatable whether it's a fix or not, but it only came up once, and I like the rule. The rule is basically saying, what is the rule here? Update this function so that its implementation is not identical. So it's saying that I've got 2 functions that are identical, but the issue is that it's in styling. So it's like, they're identical for now, sure, but maybe they could change and then they'll be separate. So I almost don't want to break them apart. But in this case, they are in a way connected. So I am going to break them apart. So basically the function it's talking about is this border styling here. This one here. So in the case of bottom border, it's like foreground and theme. And based on foreground, you either return this or that. And I'm doing the same exact thing here. But in this case, they're connected, like I said. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make another function up here called styled border. And the styled border is that exact same function here. And then I'm just gonna replace it in these 2 places here. And I'm gonna replace it here. Now the trickiness is because we're using TypeScript in a strict way, when I do something simple like that, I have to be clear with TypeScript, which I've done. So yeah, so now with TypeScript, I had to say it's part of this thing here that can have foreground, and it's also this here where it's got a theme that's the default theme. So I needed to be explicit with those things so I could use them. But otherwise, it fixed that little bug there. And there's an issue here that I'm going to fix in that next thing, is that I always want my types to be like this, where this one is called type, and then this one's just styled. I like them to be separate because then it's more clear to me. Okay, I'm only importing this to use its type. I'm using this one for something else. I like that. Now, it stopped warning me about that. I think it's because some ESLint rules have changed. Maybe then when I added the ESLint Next.js rules, that they are okay with it without type. But I prefer it this way. I feel it's more explicit. So that's why in the next commit, I'm going to make it a rule again. Whereas at one point it was a rule, but now it's not anymore by default. So we're going to explicitly make it this way that I prefer. But for now, we'll just fix it there. Okay, so we fixed that, which was, what was that called? Duplicate function? Yeah. Fixed or implemented styling function only once. There we go. And now we'll add that TypeScript rule to the ESLint as well, which is where? Here. And the TypeScript rule alphabetically, I have no idea. So let's just paste it in here and see. Wrong. It was supposed to be up here. There we go. TypeScript ESLint, consistent type imports. Error, prefer type imports. I prefer type imports, yes. So I think for the most part we have type imports. So now if we do the script again and we run ESLint, I think we'll pass because that was the only exception, I believe, and I caught it quick, I think. Yeah, cool. So ESLint passed now. So now, there we go. So now we have even more strict linting and we're passing, which is always nice. So add import, add prefer import type rule. We'll commit that. We're making good progress here. So we're down to the last couple. So peak to peak, peak to peak. So this is that thing that guy pointed out, basically. And I'm just going to do this without looking at the commit because the logic is basically I just have to rename it all. It's a big change from a file change point of view, but it's pretty minor from a logical point of view. So basically changing all these peaks with the letter A to peak with the letter E, with 2 E's, because that's actually how it was supposed to be. And we'll just rename this file, and we'll rename this hook. And then we're going to have to start searching for the word peak. And I'm going to do a quick replace here. So I'm going to say, search for peak, only match exactly the word peak like this with a capital P. Oh, that's this here. And we're going to replace that with this peak. And then now we can take a quick preview and just make sure it's going to replace the correct ones. So, because we don't want it messing with anything that would be incorrect. Yeah, like this is wrong here. I don't want it to change my library files or my stream comments. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go file by file here, and there's this replace all you can use. So in this file, it's all correct. In this file, yep. And in this file too. There we go. So those are the 3 places. And I think that there was another peak that's lowercase. Or many, actually, still. Why didn't this change? What the heck happened here? That should have changed. Why didn't that change? Let's double check this again. Peak, match the case. Maybe I did a replace with the exact same thing. Okay, that's probably what I did. Let's fix it again correctly this time. So once again, replace and replace. Okay. Oh, cancel that. Don't do that. So no matching this now. What peaks do we have left? So we have this one, this one. There we go. So now we just have one called peak events. So we'll just straight up replace that one with peak events. There we go. And that's it, I think. I think we just replaced them all. Yeah, it was mostly just in the files and naming the files. Now let's search for peak. Yeah, there's no peak now. Speaker. These aren't my files. These are library files. I don't care what they say. So there we go. That fixed that. And if we were to run, sometimes you got to run yarn build just to see if you broke anything, because yarn build will really tell you if you broke something. I'm going to turn the AC on again. It's back up to 90 Fahrenheit. Oh, Red Bull gave me wings, man. All right. So this build is taking a long time. Let's assume it worked in the meantime and make our little comment here. So the build passed, so that probably means all my renames were fine, is my conclusion. So we'll just call that peak to peak. That was all it was. Oh, it made a file here with a build command. I'm just going to undo that. We'll do that at the end, but again, I don't want to do that right now. I don't want to sneak it in because it's unrelated to this peak change. So peak, done. So here's another big one. Remove prettier custom settings. So I've decided I want my thing to be as generic, and so like I'm using as many lint rules as possible. I'm using as many generic things as I can, because I want this to be a open source project for the people kind of thing. And you can just look at any piece of this code and know, oh, okay, it's formatted in the way that it should be. So in that way, I have my prettier file, but I actually had my own little rules. I preferred single quotes, and I preferred no trailing comma. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? Let's just use whatever prettier says in all cases. So I'm going to delete this prettier file, and I'm going to rerun prettier, and it's going to be a big change. It's going to change a ton of files, because it's going to change all my single quotes to double quotes. There we go. So it just changed 118 files. And it's basically, that's it. That's the change. I'm just going to follow Prettier's rules. So there's less files here now. This became a little bit shorter because now I don't have even my own custom Prettier rules. I'm just using bog standard. So remove prettier custom settings and change all files. Done. Now I think this is probably going to break VS Code again, where it's going to be incorrect about my prettier rules. Let's double check. Let's open up a file and see how mad it is. Actually, it doesn't seem too bad, so it actually worked. Sometimes that doesn't work. Nice. Okay, so the next thing here, this one's random. Yeah, here, add numeric separator, because why not? Exactly. So basically here, this is just something I saw that I thought was fun. Was this 1000? Now I'm questioning whether it's fun, actually. It almost seems kind of silly. How come there's only 2 of them? There should be more. Where's my millisecond? Oh, here it is. So basically what I was thinking of doing is something I found out you could do in JavaScript now with ES 2021, I think. Because we support ES 2021, is I can do this. Just to show you that that's 1000. Is you can have these separators, but it still like, works as 1000. It's kind of pointless, but maybe this will catch on. I mean, this is really bleeding edge ES 2021, and it's so minor and so unimportant. But I almost feel like doing it just to make people be like, what is that? You know, and it's like, oh, this is the new way of doing it. So maybe I will. So I do want to represent 1000. I am happy to have that little visible node that it's not 100, you know, and if I want to do 1,000,000, I can do like that. But why not? You know? So let's even do that for these Z indexes too. I think this is the only time I'm using this. Actually, it might not like it here. Yeah, there it doesn't like it. So you can't do it for CSS. But in the case of that constant, now I can do that. Actually, now that I see it, I hate it though. Let's just not do it. It's just confusing. It's angering me now. So never mind. Gone. And then we can update the FS, sure. We changed the libs, so let's just do that build FS where we update it. Updated FS for new libs there. Add tweaks and modified dates. So we fixed that peak-to-peak thing. That was fixed early on. We'll do that's in the next episode. Webamp types, yeah, we'll look at that next episode. So I'm gonna turn off the AC here and press my push of my 18 commits. I think we just did it. I think we just talked about a lot of stuff. On one note too, let's put this in the next stream. So 2 things that I talked about in the last 2 streams and never did, and then I haven't done this stream either, is selection. So / multi-select. So basically the ability to just like click down on the desktop and drag and make that little blue box that can select multiple icons. I've put a lot of work into getting that part done, but not on the having the ability to select multiple icons. There's actually a little bit more considerations there to make it work in a relevant way. So I've decided to table it a little bit, and I've saved all the code, so I still have it all. And I talked about trying to put it in a couple episodes, but you know what? It's not done. So I don't want to put it in there and then have it as half done as it is, because it's quite half done. So I'm not going to do that. And then also the sidebar for the start menu, when you hover over like the power icon and have it slide out the text, I have that little bit, but there's still so many little pieces to make the sidebar right that I'm saving it for now. But I think next episode I'll probably bring in those 2 things, or in the next couple episodes. And I've got it on my board. I moved it over. At one point I had it over there with confidence that I thought it was done, but I moved it back. So I'm very confident now that everything that's over there is done and now is in the code, and I've shown it all to you guys, and everything that's not done is still over there. And as far as my release date, as I told you guys, it's going to be on my birthday. So I have a counter that I keep track of it. So I have 152 days left now, basically. So I'm hoping in 152 days to have all that done. And that'll basically be what I have left for the stream. And I see a chat messages come in here before I ditch here. I just want to see here what Stefan said. Hey, did you write implement instead of implement in an earlier commit? Oh, it's very possible, sir. Very possible, yeah. As far as my commit messages, they're a little bit Wild West. So as long as they get the point across, I'm happy for them to be a little sloppy. The code itself, I'm a more of a stickler on. But my commit messages, I mean, how many of them I've done already? Let me double check here. So I just pushed my latest commits. Let's take a look here. Let's go to my X and go to my redo branch, because that's the newest branch. 503 commits we're at now. So 500 commits, 26 weeks, 6 months. Not bad. And if you look, because I've done all these commits live and it talked the entire time, They're incorrectly spelled. Here you go. Implemented here. Yeah. Is this the one you were saying? Implemented. Let's see here. Let's do the true arbiter of spelling. Oh yeah, I had that wrong. So thank you. You called it. But I'm not going to fix it. And the way Git is, it's not even easy to fix, you know? I'd love to just be able to go in and just rename these. That'd be great. But it's a pain in the butt if you want to try to. It's like I'd have to branch off here and redo. It's garbage. Or there's a way to do it, I guess, but it's very command liney in a way that I hate for Git. So I'm not just walking away from it. But you called me on that one. Thank you, Stefan. You got me. But yeah, we're at 500 commits, so that's cool. And every one of them is descriptive, you know, 500 that are actually pretty well written because they're all part of the show notes as well. But yeah, on that note, I was pretty much winding down. We're at 2 hours, 45 minutes. I talked about all the stuff I wanted to. We did a ton of upgrades to Webamp. It's got skin support now. We got a better open width. We got better file extensions. Yeah, Stefan here says, yeah, no big deal, just bugging you. No, I'm sure you are. It's fun. It's all fun and games. What is the internet if not for picking at people's spelling, you know? But yeah, no, we had a good episode, I think. I'm happy with it. It's 6 months. We got another almost 6 months to go, I think. November 26th is my birthday, so that's the day I'm planning to release it. And I'm hoping every little post-it note that I can get is going to be from over there to there, and you guys are going to be able to play with a full OS or whatever this is when it's all done. So anyways, I think it's time to call it a night. I don't have any more cool commits for you guys for tonight, so thanks for tuning in. If you liked it, please throw me a like. If you want to keep supporting me or keep me motivated or just keep up with what's going on, please subscribe. It's happy. It keeps me happy. I like seeing on my phone with a new subscriber. I'm thinking, oh, cool. You know, the more I get, the more I'm thinking like, what can I show them? What features can I add? And there's still some cool ones here that are going to be fun. And once it's done too, I'm going to do how-to videos. I'm going to do little short clips, kind of going through each piece, and then I'm going to start picking it apart. But we still have to push the ball up the hill. You know, we got a lot of work ahead of us still. So again, thank you guys for tuning in, and goodbye. See ya.